Not 40, but definitely 30.
I blame Arwin. Interrupt
right.
Me? Yeah. I was just keeping it a bit more direct.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Everything out there.
No, I do agree with you, Arwin, on that. With me saying electrostatics, I am being wrong, but that's how it's described in that paper by Morton Spears.
Okay.
Yeah. He deals with it as an electrostatic charge of the medium.
Can I ask you something you said about Einstein and the speed of light and something like that? Can you go back where you said after Einstein, someone measured the speed of light, right?
Yeah, Lewis Essen. He's the guy. Yeah.
All right. So what I've read here, like the first one who measured the speed of light was like 1676, Olaus Römer, but he didn't really measure it precisely. But that's not my point. I wanted to ask you: do you believe the speed of light is constant? No, it can vary. So
yes.
if you take a torch and launch it in one direction, the speed of light will be faster if you would just hold it like that.
Yeah, there is a medium that we don't account for at the moment, which is the ether. Yeah.
It puts a brake on light. That's what ether does.
There's an analogy of that with a lift in light, where you go up, and does the light bend down as it's going in a path, and it's kind of like a Coriolis fictitious force. The light is still going straight, but it's still bending down because you're going up.
Do you agree with those, what was it, 300 million meters per second speed?
Well, the whole thing that brought me to Flat Earth 5 years ago was Rupert Sheldrake's banned TED Talk. I don't know whether anyone's seen it, but it's called The Science Delusion. And he goes through 10 dogmas of science. And the one that he discusses in there is saying that he went back through all the history books and got all the recordings of what the speed of light was, and he mapped them all out, and he found that there was a huge shift, like a phase shift going on, where it was variable, only slightly, but variable.
Rupert who?
Rupert Sheldrake.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a PayPal link in the info box below the video. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. We are joined by Zinda, The Plain Truth, SX, Sleeping Warrior, Physics Warrior, Jose, Gleam, Earth Flattener, and Arwin. Arwin. Is that Gravity Arwin or something? What's that, Arwin?
Arwinian Gravity, baby.
Arwinian Gravity. Good to have you all.
Hola.
It's the gravity. Sorry if I took so long on that. I was just told
not at all. Don't apologise. It doesn't matter. There's no limits in terms of time here. It doesn't matter.
Baller complaints.
No, it was me. I just wanted to point out that in no way was 5 minutes.
Yeah, no,
that's fine.
I thought it would be 5 to 10 minutes maximum.
Right, it doesn't matter. I have a couple of questions. But do you want to do housekeeping first, Nathan, or do you want to carry on?
No, I want to carry on. So this is part 2. I've just labelled the show as History of Gravity Q&A. So obviously in the last show, if you want to check out number 508, this is 509. I need to change that number. So if you check out 508, you've got Gleam going through his history of gravity. Now, it's not obviously all his beliefs, it's just a history of gravity. So there are a few interruptions from Arwin, tut. But nevertheless, you can go and check that out if you want to make sense of what we'll be discussing now. So after that, obviously, there's going to be a bit of Q&A and a few people who've got a few questions, me included, for Gleam and what he's presented. So, like I say, check out 508 if you want to see what was presented. This is going to be the Q&A about exactly that. So I think, as Arwin did interrupt a few times, he's not going to go first. So, Anthony, I know you've scribbled down a couple of questions if you want to go afterwards, Arwin, and then anybody else.
Thanks a lot. I cleared up
Sleeping Warrior
important context.
potential.
So.
Yeah, well, before we get to the potential, Cavendish, you said that I remember this back in my very early on journey, and I'd forgotten it. And now you've said it, I want the citation for it because it'll come in handy for me in future.
Sure.
You said that Cavendish didn't actually originate his experiment for the purposes of proving said gravity.
Have you not seen the Wikipedia? Experiment. Have you not seen the Wikipedia page? It's right back, smack bang in the middle.
Right, so the citation for it is the Wikipedia page?
No. The actual paper, if you read the paper, the original paper, right, is basically all about weighing the world, the local density.
And that's on the Wikipedia page?
No, well, you'd have to go to AIP, I normally get it from. AIP, American Institute of Physics.
Did you not know that? Sorry, that surprises me, Anthony. Did you really not know that Cavendish was designed to weigh the world? Did you not know that?
It was called Weigh the World.
I knew that, but I'd forgotten it because it's a few years since I've looked at Cavendish and I'd just forgotten it. And now that you've mentioned it, I want the citation for it because it'll come in handy.
Sure. Get it here now.
I like the fact that it was misrepresented after his death.
That was it, by unnamed physicists. No one put their name to it. No one said, yeah, well, this is it. All they said is, they proved density. You got the figure, therefore gravity.
If you can like cite that as a source that's credible, that's really interesting because, like I say, I heard that a long time ago, but since forgotten it. But now you've said that, it's like, oh yeah, I'd forgot all about that. That's one of those really important points that I just forgotten about. The potential energy. Let me go back to that. Potential energy shielding. Oh, yes, my point with that was that's the very point that Chris Monk took issue with the ring laser gyro and the infrared gyro. I think it was the other one. I can't remember what the other one's called. The laser gyro and the infrared gyro. I think it is
optical gyro.
Pardon?
Optical.
Because I think, as far as I know, the issue was that when one of the gyros was put in a Faraday's cage to try and shield it from the electromagnetic effect, it gave the same result in the cage as what it did out of the cage. So
it doesn't work. That doesn't work. A Faraday cage cannot shield potential, especially a rising gradient. That's the important part.
And the other, there was another one that was a helmet's gauge. Something or other, I can't remember what it's called, but that was also used. But the conclusion that Chris came to was that because there was no effect to the results that were obtained, it could only possibly have meant that the Earth was rotating. But you said that the potential energy can't be shielded.
No, not even a Faraday cage. Put it this way: a Faraday cage is exactly what it says. It's a cage where you add charge to the system. And then what it does is it creates a shield all around the charge where the inner core of all this charge is assumed to be neutral.
So that what you've just said there supports what Bob's explanation for why Chris interpreted what he interpreted was fallacious or wrong or misguided.
Well, Bob said... Yeah, I was going to say, the thing is, you remember seeing the Feynman little diagram of a man with all the 100 volts, 200 volts, those lines, and going over him. It's that potential is in the background to that. So there is still a rise in potential. And when you get any rise in potential, even if you get a Faraday cage will only work on a solid potential, as in a mean potential across the whole thing. Yeah, it has to be the same. And that's what the Faraday cage achieves. It tries to achieve equipotential or equilibrium with the outside field, so nothing should be able to come in. It gets swallowed up by the cage, basically. But that will not shield potential.
And that, I'm sure it's that potential that was being recorded or demonstrated by the ring laser gyroscope that Chris accepted was proving the rotation of the Earth.
It's rubbish. It's me personally, I think that's rubbish, because you do it on a mechanical one. Mechanical one doesn't exhibit that.
Correct. And that was the point Bob made. And a lot of people were 50-50 about, well, who's right then? How can we trust one over the other? And it became like obfuscated by the fact that it seemed to be 50-50. But when you look further into it, you're not the only one that's got the view that the potential energy is not being shielded by the Faraday cage. It's only the other type of energy that is. And I tend to lean towards that. I tend to accept that that's the explanation for why Chris did what Chris did.
Okay, I'm going to step in.
I'll give you a good citation for that. I'll give you a good citation for it. It's if you type in Harvard electrostatic shielding in Google, it'll come up top link, and in there it literally says you cannot shield a particular potential if there is a gradient rise or a gradient change, should I say.
Harvard electrostatic shielding?
Yes. And it confirms, yeah, we managed to do all this shielding, but there's this one bit that we can't do.
Right.
And that's basically what it says in there. It's not an actual paper, but it's them discussing how they're going to do cabling, electrostatic cabling.
My last point, and then Nathan can jump in. You said that 5% of the calculations, when you had that pie chart up and it was showing 5%,
yeah.
Just rephrase it again so I don't mash up the phrase. What did you say about the 5%?
Right. So in the globe Earth model at this moment in time, you have 0.5% is stars and matter.
But with the pie chart, you showed the slice of the pie said 5%. What did that 5% relate to?
Well, this is it. The matter that we can see, that's just what we can observe and see. 5%. That's it.
The rest of it is either not even existing or it's completely wrong.
The rest of it is dark stuff. The blag. The dark blag. No. Well, they say it is, but it's not detectable. It can't be picked up. It's like God. It's God. They're just basically saying
it's a MacGuffin. That's what it is.
Yeah. So is there anything there, or is it basically they're calculating for nothing but telling us there's something there?
Yeah, it's exactly that. They're calculating for it. They're saying, yeah, we've solved this problem where all our calculations didn't work on distant galaxy rotations. They said, yeah, we've resolved it. How did you resolve it? We called it a name. That's all they've done. We just put a label on it and said, that's dark matter.
So if that percentage was, did you say it was 5% or 0.5%?
Well, it's 5%, and that 5% is made up of just 0.5% stars and planets that we can see, and 4.5% hydrogen gas that we can detect.
So basically, from a statistical point of view, 5% is not even statistically significant. Yet that's the only bit we can see and view, and the rest of it isn't.
That is
jumbo.
5% of their model is right. That's what they're telling us.
Yeah,
that's what the globe Earth is basically saying. Yeah, 5%. We imagine flat earther going to the globe Earth, saying, "Yeah, I've just made a model. Yeah. I've got 5% of it working, but I've got this gleam matter and gleam energy." And when they go, "Well, what's the evidence for that?" and I say, "I'll tell you later, but just believe me, it's there. We're searching for it."
I'll give way now because they're all my points done. Oh, by the way, did you make this presentation just for this show, or did you already have it?
No, I made it especially. What I done, right, is ages ago, about 2-3 weeks back, I done a quantum eraser type. What's the cause and effect of this dark matter? And I think quantum eraser got a bit, oh no, it's dark. He's talking about dark matter. Forget about it, and dismissed it. So I put it into this presentation, and I thought, I'm off for my birthday. I'm going to present this to the world.
Well, I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Today?
I'll give way.
No, yesterday it was. I was going to call in yesterday, but it got too late, and I had to go out. I went to a jazz club. It was lush.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I give way, Nathan, if you want.
Well, the only thing I was going to talk about was the actual scientific validity of any of the stuff that you presented. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Literally nothing in there was scientifically valid. Am I correct?
Yes, I will say that. Yes. However, It's the scientific invalidity of the globe model that I'm trying to get out there.
I totally understand what you're doing.
With their chest open saying, show me a working model. And no one is understanding, not even Globers are understanding that their model's 95% wrong.
Well, yeah, my issue isn't with picking apart the nonsense in their explanations. My issue is when it comes to things like the gyroscope, which is why I piped up when Anthony was talking about it, because this is used and punted as science, the gyroscopes, and it just isn't. It doesn't prove or disprove anything. So to say it's caused by Earth turning or caused by ether turning is horseshit. There's no cause and effect being established with gyroscopes. It's not scientifically valid in the slightest. But yet flat earthers and globe earthers argue the toss about gyroscopes all day long because it's open to interpretation, exactly as Anthony pointed out. Well, we've got methods for establishing causes of things, science, but that's not what they're doing with gyros. Just to point that out, that was my objection.
I truly believe, this is my personal belief, is that both models work and calculate. This is the separating factor from them both. I think obviously you make observations which defy the globe and they try and wash off as an illusion, Cenalian eclipses, illusion, and you can chant illusions or talk about illusions all day long, but with what they have found themselves, their model is wrong, and it's either dark matter or smaller universe in my eyes, and they've been trying to find this dark stuff for 90 odd years and not a shred of evidence, just maths. And yeah, I side with the flat earthers on that side of things because they don't recognize that, but I can't say 100% it is definitely a flat earth, because my whole thing is like many people, I believe it when I see it. And when I go up there so high, if I ever, and I see a globe, I'm a glober. If I see a flat, I'm a flatter. But I do understand as well, convex lenses versus convex atmosphere can create the globe illusion.
Cool.
I don't know if anyone's seen that. Did anyone remember Patrick Moore? You know, the guy who's done Games Master?
Yeah.
The astronomer? Yeah, he done a flat earth episode.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Has anyone seen that?
I have, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And he starts speaking to a guy, and he's a flat earther, and he goes, yeah, you know, we got pictures of a globe in space, and the guy goes, yeah, of course, that's exactly what you would see with your convex lens of your eye versus the convex lens of the atmosphere. It's going to bend it into a globe with distance. So it's like putting two bowls against each other, both of you looking in, and then your eyes, your whole face is just going to well out on each of yours. That's exactly all it's doing. It's another illusion of a globe.
I mean, it was dealt with in a very serious way, although I know the guy you're talking about, the guy in the tweed jacket at the beginning of the show. You know, he wasn't as kooky as they'd probably present now. You know, when they do mainstream coverage these days, it certainly wouldn't be with good old Patrick. Talking of Patrick, did you see? We were talking about Richard D. Hall, the other day. Did you catch him taking apart Patrick's interview with Neil Armstrong?
Yes, where they looking left, looking down, or analysing all his body movements. Yeah, that was amazing.
No. This was different. So Richard Hall paid a voice or speech analyst to go through every word that it said.
Yeah, no, that's the very one I'm on about. Yeah.
Yeah, he's linking the associations. They analyse everything,
and he's blagging it. He's
basically he's using distancing language. I had to go back and look at it again because I couldn't remember yesterday. But he's basically saying, when he's asked a direct question, what do the stars look like, for example? I'm paraphrasing, but if that's the question, what do the stars like? Well, for you, the stars would look like this. They would, you know, and he kind of distances himself from the answer, whereas this is supposed to be something that he's directly witnessed.
Yeah, well, he says when one looks at the stars, and he distances himself from when I looked at the stars.
Exactly.
That's it. When one's like the Queen, isn't it? When one.
Well, no, he just separated himself from the question.
That's it.
And it just showed that he was telling lies. It wasn't in the first person. It's when one looks at the stars are very black, or whatever he said. He didn't say when I looked at the stars.
It's like a matte black, something like that. But has anyone seen Holton Arp? Anyone heard of him? Holton Arp's another one that really reinforces my dimension of the universe is wrong story. Holton Arp, he had an interview with Patrick Moore on In the Night Sky back in the 80s. And what he discovered is quasars that were used as standard candles, which are just basically like measuring sticks, out in the universe. They exhibited the same redshift on the Doppler effect as a newborn quasar. So one traveling really, really fast away from you is the same red as a newborn one forming. And he discovered a massive problem with the whole of the measurement system because these were used as standard candles. And he literally found that two right next to each other, one supposedly going really fast, billions of miles in the galaxy, and another one stationary, just being born, they were exchanging matter together. So they had to have been in close proximity, which meant that a lot of astronomy's actual mathematical equations to pinpoint stars everywhere could be completely wrong. And he got barred from telescopes. He got barred from everything. I think it was Chakasandra who got sent his paper, and he wrote on it in physical handwriting, "This is beyond my imagination." And if you've looked into that, I think it's Chakasandra. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a old school, big time physicist in the States. But yeah, Holton Arp is definitely someone to look into.
Cool. I'll have to do that. I'm looking for that an analysis that was done on Richard Hall's channel. If I can find it, I'll stick it in the side chat for the audience. So talk amongst yourselves.
I thought his analysis on 9/11 was good, where he created that model, and then he said that it's not a plane, it looks like a ball, like a sphere coming in.
Yeah, he put something forward very recently on 9/11, which I thought was interesting. So, you know, interesting. I'm not saying I endorse this. So he was showing various different cameras that had taken pictures of the planes going into the buildings. And he's saying, look, obviously people did see planes, because there's a lot of no-planers out there. But what he postulated, or the guy he was talking to, let me get it right, he was featured in someone else's video, that's correct, and he reposted it. Sorry, just to get it right. And in that particular video, their postulation is that the planes are being rendered in real time, sort of Project Bluebeam style holograms in real time, basically, from a distant source, maybe another plane. But based on the fact that they could project it, it could defy the laws of physics because it's a projection. But what gave that away, in his view, was some of the lower frame rate videography that was taken, that had literally taken pictures of the plane with missing wings. So his the speculation being that it hasn't had time to render quick enough for the camera that's taking the picture of the plane. That's why you end up with pictures of planes with a missing wing and thing. It just hasn't rendered quick enough. In the same way as if you try and take the pictures of the back of a modern car with its LED headlights, you might take a picture and they're not on because you've just missed it in the refresh time of those LED lights. So that was the speculation that he put forward. Now that's a new one on me. I'd never heard that, and it answered a lot of the speculation for people saying, well, I was there, I saw planes. And there's plenty of people who do say they saw planes, and there's videography for planes. So you go, well, obviously people saw planes. You know, I'm not going to just discount out of hand first-hand accounts of people seeing planes on 9/11. But the physics doesn't make sense. So this would be at least an explanation. I'm not going to accept this explanation, but it's at least an explanation for that.
I couldn't work out Richard's final conclusion on whether there were planes or not from that video.
Well, it wasn't his video. I think that's probably the reason, if it's the recent one you're talking about. He was just featured in it.
Yeah.
So he was re-uploading it. But certainly the conclusion I came to after watching that series of 3 videos on Richard Hall's channel, I apologise for not knowing the original editor and videographer, but the conclusion I drew was that he was suggesting that the planes had been rendered in the air, that people could physically see a rendered image of a plane hitting a building. It wasn't a real plane, it was a rendered plane. That was what he was putting forward. That's the impression I got. I could be wrong, but that was what I thought the assertion was.
Can I?
Holographic planes projected?
Yeah, pretty out there. But
Like that whale.
Without any gases for the projection to actually manifest on. That is weird.
I think that was covered. I can't remember. I'll get it. I'll put that as a link. But this is the same guy that we were talking about earlier in terms of the interview with Patrick Moore and Neil Armstrong. So this is the same guy. Sorry if I'm hesitant in talking. I'm trying to do two things at once and grab the link, but I'll stick that in the chat now. So Richard Hall's channel, I can't actually find the pulling apart of the Neil Armstrong thing, but I can find the 9/11 one because it's very recent, so I'll stick that in instead, and you can get to his channel at the very least and know who we're talking about, if not the interview with Patrick Moore. So let's stick that in the side chat now.
Liam, I got a question for you.
Sure.
How far away is the sun?
Unknown.
So
Unknown. I was banging that drum way before I heard it. I was banging the drum to say it was from Aristotle to Huygens. It was a guess by naked eye, not even a telescope. And it is a guess, a mathematical guess, and it can equally be any other scaling.
Yeah.
Because you only get a percent. You don't get a figure. You never get a mileage figure. It's just I can understand how they've done it, where they've gone from this angle to this angle, this appears at this time, and they've created this model.
Yeah. That's given that relative scale.
Yeah,
right?
And that's why they've had to push it out, because they've gone, oh, Mercury's not doing as it should. Oh, we need to change it. The sun's a bit further out. Oh, no, now Saturn's a bit wobbly. And then literally, that's all it is. I just think
the model's falling apart.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys in a room going, oh, damn, that didn't work out. Let's do something. We need to, yeah. And it is literally a 3D model from Wolfie with polystyrene.
So do you therefore not know, or do you dismiss, or with regards to the 93 million mile sun, what's your position on that value? Is your position that it's unsubstantiated, or
Definitely.
do you?
Yeah, I believe that with the dark matter thing, it's a pretty basic and stupid raw calculation. But if you get the first factor of 10, where it was identified by Fred Zwicky back in the 1930s, if you get that first measurement, it was 300,000 light years or something. And apply that factor of 10 to the total observable universe, remove that, basically taking that 5% as 100% of the system, then it calculates that their sun, 93 million miles away, is 3,200 miles away. That is just a basic, without any inverse squaring or anything like that, but just basically saying, right, the whole of your universe is factored of 10 wrong. Judging on that, how many light years it is.
JLB.
It's oddly, I think it's real odd that the sun is 93 million miles away and the total observable universe is something like 93 trillion miles across.
Right.
Just give us 1 sec. Let's do a mic check with John LeBon.
How you doing, John? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good to have you.
Hello.
Oh, thanks for having me. I didn't mean to interrupt conversation. So
no, we had to because I've not seen you in before, and I didn't know if it was a troll account or not.
No, that's cool. But I just mean, like you guys are talking, so I didn't want to come in and sort of take over. I'm happy just to sit and listen and get the feel of the place. You know, get the read of the room. So I'll go back on mute and just listen for a bit.
Cool, man. So then the answer to the question for the 93 million mile sun specifically is that it's
fictional.
They don't know.
It's fictional. It's a mathematic guess that isn't 93 million miles from Eratosthenes is not an actual dead measurement. It's exactly, I'm in full support on how you lot view it, where it's not a measurement, it's a calculation.
Yeah, and it's
a calculation.
Estimation.
It could work. Yeah.
Basically estimation. That's what it's routed in.
Let's guess.
Yeah. Because it's changed so much, even if you go back further. I mean, I don't know whether you knew, but back in 3 BC or something like that, the Chinese repeated Eratosthenes' experiment by the royal ascent. So it's like in the royal documentation, and they've done it based on a flat Earth, and they actually got the sun's measurement to be about 300,000 miles away. I don't know whether you knew that, but
no, I didn't know that. And 300,000 that's 10 times bigger than the other value. How could they get it so?
I don't know. I haven't gone through it all, but I've skipped through it. There's this, it's called Zhangzi or something like that, and it's like all the king's documentation, like library that he sent out, people looking for herbs. What does this do, and all stuff like that. It's like a Kabbalah of the Chinese. But yeah, that was interesting to find out that they got it to their maths. They got it to 300,000 odd. It's like 333. Really weird.
Okay, John LeBon.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how far away the sun is?
No.
So the answer for you is I don't know as well.
The sun is a solid physical object. I mean, do you believe the sun is a solid physical object?
The only thing that makes me think it might be is the sunspots, because I don't know how they'd be explained on some kind of manifestation.
I can explain that.
Go on.
Sunspots are just highly concentrated magnetism. I see it as a charged ball of electric. If anyone's heard of what they called thunderballs or something like that, they're charges of lightning that people see on planes going right down the aisle, and it's a phenomenon. Either way, you can't create it. It's just people have seen it, but it's a charged mass, and wherever these sunspots are the tail ends of arcing. If you look at a sun's flare, it looks identical to electricity arcing.
I agree.
Yeah, and the actual bottom part of that is it all getting sucked in, but there is a much bigger magnetic field all around it, and those black spots, they're changing, so they're not a physical thing. So you'll have them sometimes, and then you'll have them grow, you'll have others appear, and it's a dynamic system.
Do you think the sun's physical?
I don't think it is. I think it's charge, concentration of charge, which on the same hand is what matter is, but different frequency
when you say
levels.
Concentration of, would that charge also be considered to be a concentration of light?
Yes, they're identical.
Because when I look up at the sun, I see what looks like. Imagine that you're on the underside of a glass dome, right? Yeah. And on the other side of the glass dome that you can't see is a magnifying glass, and it's focusing a focal point of light onto the dome, and we see the reflection of that. Like we're the ants that you're burning when you're a kid. We're looking up and seeing the spot of the concentration of light coming down through on us, and we're underneath it. We're the ants. That's how I see it. But I mean, I just don't accept that it's a hydrogen helium fusion cold hot thing that they tell us weighs. I mean, really, hydrogen explodes that fast and violently. It would be an explosion. It wouldn't be this fusion thing that they describe to us. And I'm not persuaded that it is physical, even though everybody seems to accept that it is. I don't know how they know that it is.
Do you know why the Solar Parker probe's been sent up there?
To mock. The way I see that is that they're mocking us to see if we believe everything that they tell us.
No, it's because they know that the sun breaches laws of thermodynamics, because the corona is far hotter off surface than it is on surface, if there is a surface.
So what you're saying is, if you can, they're gambling that they can get through the outer part of the sun to get to the cooler part in the middle.
They're trying to figure out why it. You know, like with a flame, the further you get away from it, the cooler it gets. Yeah. It's exactly that effect that it's completely opposing on. It's sort of like 500,000 Kelvin on the surface, and then 300,000 Kelvin, a couple of hundred miles or 100,000 miles just off the surface.
Who are they exactly? You said they are looking at this.
NASA.
Right.
This is all NASA. NASA knows all of this, and the electric universe theory. They are saying yes, this is exactly what you would expect if the sun was powered by the medium. If it drew in the electricity from the medium to burn off,
But it's another abuse of the word theory, because this isn't a scientific theory. This is a mystic meg theory. It's meaningless.
Yeah.
I'd say the electric universe definitely does have scientific findings.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
you show me any scientific experiment they can do in this field of pseudoscience where they can't control their independent variable because it's a light in the sky.
Look up the Sapphire Project.
Sapphire Project?
Sapphire Project.
Tell me briefly what it was.
Okay, it's just basically a piece of equipment where they are studying plasma and how plasma reacts. And they're literally providing same shaped evidence as you would see on suns, even scorch marks on planets that they're saying is caused by electrical discharge from this medium. And again, you've got the likes of Birkeland currents, which
hold on, you're scattergunning me. So you've just said that they're looking at what the effect being electrical currents on plasma. So the effect is plasma. So they're trying to figure out what plasma is. Is that what the experiment is?
No, plasma charge is what they're saying the sun is. But also,
no, I'm not asking what they conclude. I'm trying to establish what their scientific validity is. So what does the experiment look at? What's the observed phenomena in the experiment? The sun?
I should pull it up. I don't know it in and out, but they are testing how plasma reacts in certain cold conditions. And they are getting results which are relating to observed phenomena that can't be explained by gravity. Put it that way.
Sure. But they're developing a complex hypothesis, though.
I would argue it's more simplex than the current hypothesis of this imaginary.
No. What I mean by complex hypothesis is they have multiple variables to take into consideration. Is that correct?
Yeah. They would always.
So this is not science.
I'm digging.
Hold on, Arwin. Hold on. This is not science. This is pseudoscience. As I asserted, none of it will be scientifically validated, and none of it is. This that you've just named is not science.
Going through the design of experiment.
Got a bit quiet.
Sorry. Using a SCADA control system. Shall I share my screen?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, so it's laboratory-based experiments. Are you allowed to play videos? Because they do like a walk around.
No, it's not unless it's mine or yours.
But they're working on how plasma discharge increases and then populates over spheres. That's the core thing of it, and are matching the results on like gravitational waves.
Yeah, this is just pure pseudoscience. Unless you can give me a naturally observed phenomena that they're looking at. And, I mean, if you can tell me where you get plasma fields forming around balls in the natural world, then fine, great. But I don't think you will.
Gravitational waves, how are they measuring that?
Yeah, if as soon as you've got the word gravity or gravitational in anything that claims to be science, it's instantly thrown into the realms of pseudoscience anyway, because there's no scientific evidence of gravity. So, unless you're going to refer me back to Einstein and his bending of space-time or weighing the bloody earth with some balls, none of this has got scientific validity if it even mentions gravity in their complex hypothesis to begin with. So it doesn't even matter anyway. It's pseudoscience to begin with. They're not isolating cause and effect relationships here.
I'm still interested, though. So maybe they mean a force, like some kind of motion-like force is created in that process, and they assume that it is gravitational.
Well, who cares? Who cares what this pseudoscience nonsense says? What do you want to do, Arwin? Do you want to take one Just So story and replace it with another one?
No, I want to know what they did there exactly.
I will come back and I will present something better than what I have. I've just name dropped and then if you can see here, there are papers. I've been following them for 3 or 4 years, and in the videos, when you're watching sort of like hour-long presentations, they do discuss and go through in great detail what they're actually doing.
They're doing
quite a lot of funding.
What they're doing is astrophysics. This is
it's plasma physics.
Yeah, plasma physics.
That's their core of it. How plasma reacts with hydrogen and this type of experiments.
An
and
experiment
then they're taking
I've
NASA's
got to stop this. It drives me nuts. An experiment is a hypothesis test. Yeah, that's what an experiment is. So when you say experiment, I'll say what's the hypothesis, and when you give me more than one variable, it becomes a complex hypothesis, sitting outside the realms of science. This will always fall into the realm of pseudoscience, and some people find pseudoscience very useful. However, it's not scientifically valid. Sorry.
Yeah, they're just tests.
That's cool. That's cool.
Well, in science, a test is an experiment. So, no. If you say test, and we're talking about science, then that would be an experiment. So, yeah, if you're talking outside of the realms of science, and you say test, no worries, you can have a maths test. But that's not a scientific test. A scientific test is an experiment. That would require a hypothesis. It would also require a naturally observed phenomena. So if any of this, that's all they have in terms of their pseudoscience. They only have a naturally observed phenomena, the lights in the sky or whatever it is they're looking at.
Well, they do have some things they do.
Well,
Energy,
they can't.
It's very
They
fascinating.
can't isolate a cause of those lights, though, Arwin, can they? They're not going to be manipulating any independent variables to cause those lights in the sky. So instantly falling outside of the realms of science.
Of course not. No, but still, what they do is still interesting. That's what I'm saying. What they declare, yeah, it's up to them. But I'm still interested in what they're actually doing. Curious to that kind of thing. Want to know a little bit more about what they actually tested, how they measured it, all that.
Yeah, look up a video on the Sapphire, and they talk you around it on what they're doing in vacuums, or it's a vacuum, it's high density vacuum, running some plasma through it.
Oh, I will have a look.
Right, so plasma in vacuum chamber. That's the setup.
It's more they're against the flat Earth, full stop, because I've brought that up many a time and they just reject. But they're also against the gravity model. Complete gravity model.
Right, to me that's all not really relevant about their opinions. I just want to know what they're doing and what they're measuring.
Yeah, there's multiple.
And then I can draw my
there.
own conclusions.
I'd have to go through, because obviously more of these will be just supportive rather than going straight through what the Sapphire is. Sapphire started around 2015, 16.
So with regard to plasma, are you familiar with these big stone balls that get washed up on the coasts all the way around the world? Thousands of them, like stone balls that look like they've been created from a plasma discharge.
Yeah, you get what's it, the plasma charges on the beach, which petrify. That's it. That's the word, isn't it? It petrifies into a solid concrete object.
Stone, not concrete. Stone.
Yeah.
What's going on there? What's that the result of? Do you know?
Well, these guys are saying that the discharges that they're making, what they're doing is basically putting sand on a plate and then firing shed loads of volts on it, and literally the patterns that it's making in that discharge look like patterns on the scorched moon, on the scorched all the planets.
Aristarchus? Really?
He's talking about his electrical scarification and drawing the comparison to what the moon looks like, which is fine. But yeah,
and that kind of encompasses my talk before, because it was more the electric charge creates the matter, and this is the governor of what density, what element.
Yeah, but if that was true, wouldn't they be able to create a Frankenstein?
Haven't they? Who's Elon Musk? Who's the Bogdanov brothers?
Come on, you're not really going to argue that Frankenstein is the concept of like creating a human that doesn't really exist.
No, they can't. They can't do a duplicate of a human, but I'm sure that they've cloned something or done something. I mean, cloning isn't. A lot of it is just artificial insemination. It's not even cloning.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you're saying that electric is the cause of like the creation of stuff,
yeah,
wouldn't we be able to replicate that with life?
Nope. Because it's unshieldable. It's uncut. It is like it's the opposite end, the equivalent to saying dark energy. It's the equivalent to that. We haven't got the technology or whatever we need to be able to encapsulate it.
Yeah, they've tried. Trust me.
Yeah, they have tried, and they failed every single time. And that's for me proof that it's not. It can only really be proof of some form of creation because we can't do it. If we could do it, they'd be singing it.
Say it's currently beyond our grasp.
Currently,
maybe
a bit like that
better
missing link for evolution, isn't it? It's there, but we can't find it.
Maybe better that way. Just saying.
Yeah, I'm anti-religious, but definitely believe we're created.
I'm the same.
Yeah, what I just showed there earlier, the cosmological constant. If you look up Leonard Suskind's little talk, 5-minute video, he literally tells you that that is evidence of God. There is no way that something can be that finely tuned, the cosmological constant, that Einstein thought it was static, so they set to 0. That cosmological constant is so fine-tuned, it's impossible to not be created.
It's the same argument for DNA causing.
Designed.
It's the same argument for DNA being evolution. It's like DNA proves that it's not evolution that we are the result of. DNA proves that the chances of it being evolution is like it's almost impossible. It's like technically possible, but the chances and probability is that slim that it's got to be something else. But people believe it, and I'm like, you a moron.
Yeah, Rupert Sheldrake
does have incredible potential.
Yeah, Rupert
Sheldrake. You have to realize that.
Yeah, sorry. Rupert Sheldrake explains it best. It says, "Give all science asks for is one miracle from God, and they can explain the rest." And that's it. And the Big Bang was exactly that.
Say that again.
Rupert Sheldrake, he says, in science, he basically goes through 10 dogmas of science, and one of them being the speed of light is constant. When it isn't, he thinks it's a variable. But he said, science's whole ambition is to say, please God, lend us one free miracle to start this all off.
Yeah.
And we'll explain the rest. We don't need you after that.
Oh, I see. He's saying it in criticism. I misunderstood the context. Okay, so he's talking about the body of science, the head of science. The science rumpus talks about where it concerns itself with things. Science doesn't do any of those things. Science isn't a man with a name tag. Science is a methodology. So this is all nonsense, according to him, from what I gather. Now you've contextualized it. Okay.
Yeah, Sheldrake is definitely a fighter for anti-science and all this fairy science. He's a believer in this field, morphic field. It's called morphic.
Well, the field.
Resonance.
I know we've just had this discussion. The field is pseudoscience. So anything that sits outside of that very limited range is pseudoscience, not science.
It's a belief.
So when he says science, he's talking about the people who've hijacked the word science to give validity to their discussions and writings and mathematics. But pseudoscience is what he's actually attacking.
Yeah. And he is himself being labelled as a pseudoscientist for that. He went up against that James Randi, you know, that debunker, spiritual debunker. He done the Kung Fu guys debunking where he was blowing the pages.
Yeah, he's great. I like him. He debunks magicians and stuff.
He went head to head with Rupert Sheldrake, and it was on. Rupert says there's a phenomena where a dog knows when you're going to be coming home as you are setting off from your work.
So true. So true.
And they measured it throughout the day, and literally, sorry. Shut up.
Gone quiet.
Yeah, sorry. 2 seconds. Yeah, so they measured it throughout weeks and days and done loads of experiments, logging when the dog was at the window waiting for the owner. And they've told the owner to set off in different cars, different times, and they created a correlation. that there definitely is something in it. It's beyond chance.
Yeah, I agree. This is where me and Nathan would massively disagree, because Nathan would say it's just a correlation, it's outside science. But I know that my dog will sit at the door waiting for me to come in, somehow knows that I'm on my way home, and I don't know how.
And James Randi said, oh, I tested it on 2 Alsatians, and over a period of a summer, where Rupert Sheldrake done about 3,000 tests or 10,000 in total. And he literally said, oh, I done it and it was wrong. It was wrong. And when he asked for his data, Rupert said, yeah, James, where's your data then? Let me have a look at it. He said, oh, no, I've lost it. The dog ate it type thing. And that was it. And he had to recount on it. Rupert said, look, you've just damaged my career because you've just put me in the class of pseudoscience when you haven't even done the experiment yourself. So show me the data. Or
do you know what else is a phenomenon with dogs?
Sorry, got to do it again. It's not an experiment.
I agree. It is just a correlation. It's exactly that. And it branches into belief, what you believe.
Do you know what else is a really odd phenomena? We feed the dogs pretty much bang on 5 o'clock every night. And we do this to test how accurate their abilities to predict when tea time is. And it's really bizarre, because when you get to daylight saving times and you get the hour going before or the hour going back, it screws with the head for about a week because they have to recalibrate. Yeah. But up until that, they are within 5 minutes every night, 5 minutes either way. Every night, 5 o'clock, they're asking for the tea. It's just bizarre. But then you have daylight saving that changes and it fucks them up for a bit. But it's just bizarre. They just know the time. It's like, how do they know that that time is when they have their dinner? Not when they're hungry, not when they're really hungry, or not when they don't quite need the food. But they know that time, within 5 minutes either way, they get that bang on every single night.
It's called memory.
You know when they raise their eyebrow? That's them looking at the clock.
Called memory.
10 past.
Memory. That's what it is.
It can't be memory, though, because memory doesn't tell you what's going to happen next.
And this is a thing that Rupert does a lot. Memory is not stored in the brain in Rupert's theory. Memory is, put it this way, it is pseudoscience, but it has science attached to it, where there was a laboratory in New York who were testing rats on whether they would choose a lit up tunnel or a dark tunnel. And then if they went to the lit up tunnel, they got an electric shock, tiny electric shock. If they went to the dark tunnel, they got through and got out of the maze. So
yeah, this is like Pavlov and Skinner's, Pavlov's dogs and Skinner's dogs.
I've got to stop it. I've got to do it every time, I'm afraid. Right, so where you start with science is with a phenomena occurring in the natural world. So science is studying the natural world. So if you can show me a naturally occurring phenomena where...
There is attached. There is. So what they were studying was...
It's pure pseudoscience. So you said... I just got to stop you. You said this has got science attached. No, it hasn't. Yeah. None. Zero. So he's saying, Richard Sheldrake, that is, don't call me a pseudoscience. Well, don't perform pseudoscience experiments then. Sorry.
Yep, cool. But this was done back in the 30s. This wasn't by Rupert Sheldrake. This was some chemists who were seeing whether there was any genetic pass on from parent to child. So what they were doing is isolating lab rats and literally sending them through these tunnels, teaching them, don't go to the light one, always go to the dark one. And then their kids, they bring into the same environment and see whether they always go to the dark one or they do the same learning process, whether they learn it quicker. So that was their experiment. And they learned that every single generation, it got fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer.
Hold on. This sounds suspiciously like the 100th monkey effect. This sounds like the 100th monkey effect.
No.
No, this is impression. This is impression. It happens to babies in the presence of, whoever of their siblings, or usually the parents, are around. And it's like sometimes it can copy memory, behavior, a sense of self-worth, all kinds of things. It's like, if a baby is not in the presence right after birth with the mother in a certain period, they can just become completely antisocial and have no social senses. because of that.
Can I ask you something for a moment? George wants to join the show, so I'm going to leave for a moment if you want him to have on the panel.
All
right.
right. If you want to drop and George want to join, that's fine.
Please.
All are welcome.
Yeah. Join now, please, George.
Since there's a break in the conversation, can I interject briefly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Man.
First of all, it's cool to see, like I've only been here for like 20 minutes, but it's cool to see so far the conversation's been pretty civil and like constructive, which, sorry for the background noise. I have to say that's pretty,
That's
I'm a bit
just
surprised.
change. Welcome in, George.
No, like this is good because what happened was a lot of people don't understand, like they don't even know who I am because I've been away from this scene for a while. But when I first started doing these kinds of conversations, it was civil and people were constructive. I guess I got frustrated by how dogmatic and religious it all became. So I was expecting to see that again, but so far this has been very pleasant. So but what I wanted to ask you guys about was now in September 2018, I wanted to get your opinions. Like, what do you think are the best flat Earth arguments today? Because I'm willing to bet that the conversation has developed since 2015-16. So today, if you were talking to someone for the first time and they were open-minded, they knew that the moon landings were a hoax, so they were already a step ahead of the normies. You wanted to convince them the Earth is flat. Like, I'm hoping to get some of you guys' feedback. What are the best arguments now? Like
I
today?
know the number one.
Hold on a second. Hey,
Hi, George. I first want to respond?
Wait, just a minute, Arwen. Just a minute. Hold on a second, Arwen. I just wanted to say I'll be back in about 15 minutes if the show is still here. I'll hold my place. I have to take care of something right now.
Right. Okay. So
Good to have you, George.
I wouldn't try and prove that the Earth's flat. I would say that the assertions that we live on a ball fail in the first instance, and point out the lack of evidence that supports the position.
Right, but if you want to carry the most weight, make a person just test it. How far can you see at minimum observer height? How far can you see, and just calculate the shape. And especially if you got good photography available, so you can see further, then you can prove it to yourself. It's just geometrically flat, and there is obstruction, but that's just a part of optics itself.
Well, his question was how would you? What are your strongest arguments? And for me, the only argument that's strong is that almost every assertion that they make lacks credible, verified, or at least verifiable evidence, because it usually appeals to an authority such as NASA or equivalent. And pictures from space is still said as one of the main arguments for why it's a sphere, completely lacking in credibility or verification. But it's still cited as being one of the claims for ball. Yet they can't prove curvature, can't prove axial rotation, can't prove gravity, can't prove an awful lot of stuff, but tell us it's true. So for me, it's not about proving that it's flat, because the most we have is like a compass and a P900, right? But what we can do is validate the original asserted claim, and he who asserts must prove, and that evidence doesn't exist. They tell us it doesn't
I should
exist.
apologize. If I said prove, I shouldn't have. I try not to, because it's such a loaded term. So I just meant, like, what are the best arguments for flat Earth? So it sounds like most of what you just said, there are arguments against spinning ball Earth, but they don't really sound like arguments for flat Earth. So, like, what are the best arguments for flat Earth?
Anybody else want to have a go? And then I'll have a go if nobody else pipes up.
Yeah, go on.
Anybody? No? My kids piped up, so...
Well, the arguments for flat Earth is the absence of evidence for a ball. If you're going to assert that we live on a ball, then prove it. If you can't prove that we live on a ball, then we don't live on a ball. Now, whether you consider that to be positive evidence for a flat plane, or whether you consider it negative against a sphere, they kind of work hand in hand, because he who asserts must prove. If the assertion is...
So are you asserting that the Earth is flat?
I'm asserting that we can't prove it's flat, because the most we've got to compass in a P900, right? There's no science for a flat Earth. We don't have the $50 million a day.
Disagree.
That's fair enough.
We can't prove the entire shape of it, but we can definitely prove the flat element to it.
Only locally.
There is, yeah, locally, but very, very far.
Yeah, but
and there is a very consistent lack of cumulative drop.
I agree.
In all sightings, and that.
But that's not proving flat, though.
Yeah, it is. It's a straight line.
It's not. It's disproving ball.
No, it's not.
No, it proves a flat surface. That's the definition of flat. It's straight. A straight line. And
that you can't say that over the whole whatever we live on, because you're only doing it local to you.
Yeah, but we can do it on the places that we can do it, and in all of them, it's pretty much consistent.
Sure, but is that proving flat, or is that proving?
Yeah, it is.
Well, I don't agree, but if you think that's
like
okay,
everywhere the same results. No, always the straight line view, with in a straight line. That's just it. And
I've got a gap while my kid's quiet enough, Arwin. Can I just pipe up just for a second, just because it's quiet enough for me to do so?
Go.
I would say it's obviously and observably flat. The only other conclusion is drawn when you presuppose that it's a sphere.
But you can't see the whole Earth, you can only see parts at a time. So it's like obviously flat to you on a short scale, but in terms of the whole Earth, is it really obvious?
Yes. So, as I say, the only other assertion, the current mainstream assertion, is that it's a sphere, and the only way to draw that conclusion, by any means, is to presuppose that you're on a sphere, and then move forward with your calculations. In other words...
But how about by inference? Like, suppose you were to draw inferences from observable phenomena, say the stars. If you were to observe them rotating around one point in the south, and then another point in the north, or what we call the south and the north, these are just names, but if you were to observe this phenomena, two distinct sort of celestial rotations that are opposite to one another, couldn't you just infer from that?
What do you mean opposite to one another?
Well, here in the southern hemisphere, if you
so we're presupposing we're on a hemisphere, John. Then, so you're in the southern.
But again,
hemisphere.
I'm just using words. I'm just using the word southern hemisphere as a
that word has a meaning, John. That word, John, has a meaning. It means you're already on a sphere. That's what it means.
Okay, no, that's okay. So how about if we just call it Australia? Here in Australia, this place we call Australia, if I use time-lapse photography, there's a place in the sky about which the things that we call stars seem to rotate. If I was in, say, England, where you are,
what direction?
And I use time-lapse photography, we would see the stars, what we call stars, rotate in the opposite direction. So can we draw inferences from that? Is that okay?
What do you mean in the...
We can't draw inferences
Hold on, what do you mean in the opposite direction? Where do your stars rise from?
Which ones?
Any. They all go in the same direction, right? So which way do they rise from? Which direction are they travelling to you?
Well, I don't think the stars are travelling to me.
Okay, but
do you know what I mean? When I talk about the celestial rotation, like time-lapse photography, do you get what I mean? Like there seems to be a point in the sky about which they rotate.
Sorry.
Are you guys familiar with that?
Sorry, I understand southern rotation. I'm asking you which direction it travels for you. Is it west to east or east to west?
Well, if it's making a circle, then I don't think you would use terms like east or west.
Really? You've just told me that you're in the northern hemisphere. So 30 seconds ago, you said it was just words when you said you're on the northern hemisphere, making my point admirably that the only way to put you on a sphere is to start on a sphere.
But here on Earth, we do have east and west.
Bear with me, John. I'm nearly there. Bear with me, John. This is my demolition of your argument, John. You don't have to like it, but I am going to demolish your argument, which is to say that I asserted the only way to make any other conclusion is to first presuppose you're on a sphere. Then you detailed that you were in the north, your clarity being northern hemisphere.
Now these are just words that we use to describe locations.
To describe a sphere. No, the word hemisphere.
Yeah, and so I'm saying that the stars make a
circular rotation. The word hemisphere, John, is used to describe a sphere and in your case, presuppose it.
But you don't need east or west for a circle, do you?
Well, I'm asking you which direction they travel. East to west is what I observe. What do you observe?
That's like saying is a circle east or west. It's absurd.
Answer the question.
Just answer my question. Do they go east to west?
Is a circle east or west?
You assert that they go in a different direction. So if we're going to quantify our terms...
Yeah, clockwise and anti-clockwise. So do you guys understand that that does happen? The rotation is...
Well, no, you asserted that they go... Hold on,
So if we agree on that, then why argue about semantics? Let's just
look at the fact
that those rotations...
Anthony, sorry, you said they go in the opposite direction to me. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in Australia, it's one direction. and in England it's another direction. Do you agree
What direction?
with that?
No.
Or are you denying that?
No,
I'm
we're
asking
denying
you
the
what-
interpretation.
I haven't denied anything. I've asked you to tell me what direction
Well, I'm
it's
just
travelling
talking
in.
about objective reality. So do we at least agree that this does happen, this phenomena can be observed?
In an opposite direction. You haven't told me what direction they travel.
So a circle doesn't have a direction, but it can be clockwise or anti-clockwise.
Sorry, so you're saying it's
Do you
anti-clockwise?
accept that there's such thing as clockwise and anti-clockwise?
Yeah, those are relative terms. So they need a starting point, John.
Sure. So relative to one another, do you accept that those rotations do happen opposite to one another? Do you accept that?
I can't be in two places at the same time, so we need to qualify terms and starting points like east and west, for
So
example.
you guys are still denying the celestial rotation?
No,
still?
no, don't misrepresent my
So do
argument.
you
I
accept
haven't.
it or do you
Okay,
not accept it? This
I've
is simple.
seen
It's
it
just
with
objective
my
reality.
own eyes. I accept the stars rotate. I'm asking you which direction because you have asserted they go specifically
And you're
opposite,
asking me what direction is a circle, which
opposite
is absurd.
to
and you know
me
that.
is
So
what
is
you
this
have
just like a
asserted,
clever
John.
rhetorical
John,
trick
the
that you're
term
still
you
using?
used was opposite. Now you're using clockwise, anti-clockwise, and saying, "Can I be in two places
Clockwise
at the same
and
time?"
anti-clockwise are opposite. You do know
So
that.
which one is
Sorry.
which?
So which
Are
way is it going for
clockwise and
me?
anti-clockwise opposite or not?
Yeah, which
Yeah,
one
Yes,
is
they
which?
are. You know they are.
The
And
rotation
is
points.
that our win? Is that the case for our stars? Which direction did they travel for you? My original question.
Well, they're not traveling for me. But if you mean what can be, do you mean what can I observe? What can be observed here?
Yeah, so for example, do they rise in the east?
I'm not talking about the rise. I'm talking about the celestial rotation, about
Yes.
the celestial pole.
So it will go from one side of the sky to the other side, correct?
I'm now ready whenever you are, so just hang in.
We're in the middle of a conversation, George. Try and pay attention. So do they rise in the east?
Do what? I'm talking. Can we just focus on the celestial poles
The
for a second?
stars, the ones
I just
you
want to know if you
are
guys
talking
accept
about.
that those things exist.
Nathan,
Because
there
I
is
do.
a way we can deal with this. Let me have a go for a minute, and if you disagree, feel free to interrupt.
Right.
John, what direction are you looking at when you observe your stars rotating in whatever direction you perceive? Are you looking north or south?
When I look at the stars, I'm looking at the night sky.
Right.
So I can look north or I can look south. Now, our celestial pole.
Hang on.
We look in
Hang
the
on,
direction
hang
that
on,
we would
hang on,
describe as south.
Stop. Would you agree that if you look north or south, that changes the way that they appear to rotate?
No, if I put time-lapse photography towards what we call the southern pole,
Yeah.
then that's just how it is.
Right. And then if you turn the opposite way and look north, but then arcing.
I won't be looking at the south celestial pole. But like, I'm a bit confused here, guys. Like, are you denying that there are these two different rotations, or are you just trying to obfuscate?
No. We're trying to
Let me
particularize
step in,
specifically
Nancy.
what you're
Not
asking.
obfuscating. I asserted that the only way to formulate a globe proof out of these was to first suggest that you were on a sphere to begin with, John.
Okay, so let's assume that it's flat, but can we still focus on the celestial rotations? Do you accept that they go clockwise in my part of the world and anti-clockwise in yours, or vice versa? Do we at least accept that?
What, based
No.
on the concepts of east and south and west that you said that
I didn't bring up east or west. I'm saying Brisbane versus
how do we
you're in
compare
what,
them?
England or something?
Well,
Let's
you
just
tell
say
me,
Brisbane and
how
England.
do we
forget east
compare
and
them
west.
then? How do we compare them?
So you can take footage of them and make a time-lapse video and then identify, are these going clockwise or anti-clockwise?
Right. But the problem with it is one observer would be looking to the south, whilst the other observer would be looking to the north. Yet both observers see the stars rise in the east and set in the west, like the sun. So it's to do with what direction you're observing your rotation in. If you say
But
south,
you do at least accept that there are these different rotations in the different
no,
places.
they're both the same.
Yes.
I'm just trying to establish what we actually accept. We can't talk about physical reality
No, they're
until
the
we've at
same.
least
They're
accepted.
not different. They're the
Sorry,
same.
we're not talking about physical reality. We're talking about lights in the sky, John. Let's get that
Well, they're
clear.
part of our physical reality.
Oh, really?
They're not.
They're tangible items or lights in the sky. Physical, so I can touch them.
More tangible means that you can touch them, but physical is just part of our physical reality. The light is part of our physical. Without light, how would you observe physical reality? So light is part of our reality, isn't it?
Okay, we've got no idea what they are.
Unless light is not part of our reality in your.
But we don't know what
I'm
they
just trying
are.
to work out what you guys think is reality.
I don't know what they are. Do you know what they are?
No.
So, what use are they?
So because I don't know what they are, does that mean that we just deny them?
No, I don't. You keep asserting that I deny something I've asserted about 4 times I've seen with my own eyes. No, I don't deny the southern rotation. My point is that for both of us...
So you do accept there are these 2 different rotations, depending on where you are in the world.
What does that prove?
Rotation.
So what does it prove?
How can they be the same if one is clockwise and one is counterclockwise?
Hold on, Anthony. What does it prove, John?
Well, again, I'm not using the word prove. I try not to use that word prove. I just use the word infer. But you can't infer anything from objective reality if you're always obfuscating about what objective reality is.
What does it infer, John?
Well, what can you infer from it? If you accept that there are these 2 different what we call celestial poles, and again, these are just words to describe the phenomenon. But if we accept that they exist, then we can draw inferences from them. So if we accept that they exist, what's the logical inference that you would draw from that?
I'm asking you that question. I've asked you.
There's a ball of stars.
Arwin,
different guys. Come on, this is getting silly.
Arwin, sorry, that was my question to you, John. You are the one who have brought them up.
Yeah, and so I'm saying, can we at least agree that there are these celestial poles?
Yeah, 5th time, yes, I've seen them. 5th time I've said it. 5th time I've said this to you, John. 5th time. I accept them. Now I'm asking you what your inferences, if you want to use that word, are, that you draw from that. Yours, not mine.
No, that's cool. So I think you could draw the inference. If you had other evidence, I think you could begin to draw the inference that the best model for this reality that we're in
Models are pseudoscience, John. Who gives a crap what models do?
Well, you use models if you...
Who gives a crap? They're pseudoscience.
A map is a model.
We're not living on a model, John. We don't live on a model. Who cares what a model does?
No, who cares? I agree.
Earth has nothing to do with
I'll ask again, what inference do you draw from these lights in the sky that turn around?
That the best model for this Earth is a ball
Sorry,
model.
I couldn't give a crap about your model. Do I have to say this 5 times? We don't live on a model.
It's not my model.
Who cares? I don't care about your model that we don't live on.
I'm just saying.
I'm talking about objective reality, not models, John. Physical reality, where we live, not
from the Earth to
models.
The
Are you deaf? Did you just obfuscate everything by talking over people? I'm not talking about models. I'm talking about reality and asking what inference you draw from these lights in the sky. Are you going to obfuscate this indefinitely?
No, I'm going to... Will you let me answer? So with objective reality, sometimes we use models because we can't see all of reality at one time.
No, that's what you use when you can't establish scientific truth through systematic experimentation. Models are pseudoscience, John. We don't live on a model.
I agree with you, we don't live on a model.
So let's focus on what we can get in terms of reality out of this. Not what
and we base our models on reality, which is why we have to establish what is reality. So I'm glad if you guys are accepting
the reality, not the model.
That.
I am going to have to say this 5 times, am I, John, with you constantly saying that it gives us something from a model. Models don't prove things. They're pseudoscience. I'm talking about reality and what you infer from the lights in the sky in reality.
Yeah, and I infer that the best model for the Earth, which is the best that I can have, I can't see the whole Earth with my eyes. And neither can you. So all we can do is come up with is what we call models.
So what?
It's nothing to do with the...
So you draw no objective reality conclusion from these lights in the sky, John? So it doesn't prove anything about our world.
Objective reality is objective reality. I don't draw things from reality as in, well, I look at this or I look at that, so this proves this. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, let me give you... Hold on. Arwin, why are you constantly rumpusing me? I'm having a conversation with John. I gave open panel to talk to him and then shut up while I did so. So can you just leave me to have this conversation, please, Arwin? Thank you. Yes, in objective reality...
Can I just explain something, Nathan? Like when I use the word model, I could use the word framework as well. Framework, model, the way that my mind envisions what this is, because I can't see it directly the shape of the Earth. So what's the best framework to describe what I can see?
Well, no, we can just look at it. For example, on screen now we have land that's 34 miles away, and we can just see it. The only problem being that people like you, John, come along with models and tell us that we can't really see it because the model says so. So are you going to tell me that...
I'm not saying that at all. No, come on, Nathan, I didn't say
John,
that. You know that.
Bear with me, John. You just can't seem to help ejaculating. So, John, I can see things that infer reality. I just look at this island. I see it. It's there. No further explanation required. Unless somebody like you comes along and says, my model says it shouldn't be there. And in the case of the globe, as I asserted originally, unless you presuppose we're on a globe, you can't use things like the stars to prove you're on a globe, because you're begging the question. You're assuming your outcome, and then formulating it in something that is called affirming the consequent, a formal logical fallacy, where you, in this instance, also beg the question, assume your outcome, globe. So the models are irrelevant. We can see things in our reality that show us it's flat. It's obviously flat, observably flat. Nothing to do with any inferences or models based on lights in the sky. Just what we can see and verify. That's my flat.
Can I respond to that? Can I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So yeah, so you can see, if you can see over 30 miles, that's awesome. I've got no issues with any of that. All I was focusing on was the lights in the sky. And the point that I'm making to you is that we do use models in our head, but you can use any word, model, framework. The point is that sometimes you can't see the whole thing, so you need to come up with a conceptualization to help you understand it. Okay. Now, you and I can't get far enough away from the Earth to see the whole Earth. If I got far enough away from it and saw that it was flat, I'd be happy, because I think there's lots of money in flat Earth. I'd love to get a piece of that action. But I can't see the shape of the Earth no matter what it is directly. All I can do is draw inferences.
Let me ask you a
But I have to draw the inferences on objective reality. And so I'm glad that yourself and some of your panel anyway, seem to agree that there are these two celestial poles, because I've had people denying that to me for the last few years. And I'm like, why would you deny reality? And I think the answer is because it doesn't fit in with the preconceived notion of flat Earth. That's what I think is going on.
It does fit in. Sorry, hold on. Why would you assert that it doesn't fit in? I see those lights in the sky. They're there.
Because how can you have two celestial pole stars or two celestial polar rotations on one single flat Earth? How could that possibly work?
We have them. They're there.
Yeah. You know, like
how would it work? How does that work in your mind?
How would it work?
You know,
it works. They're there.
When you visualize the Earth in your mind, how does it work?
We see them. They're happening. That's what happens. You can describe it and detail it of what you observe and see. That's working. What do you mean not working?
Yeah, you might observe and see it, but it's falsifying the flat Earth.
Sorry, how is seeing it and the Earth being flat in any way a falsification of flat Earth? We see it.
It's a contradiction of terms. You can't have two celestial poles and a flat Earth simultaneously.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't.
Sorry, when you say two celestial poles, do you mean two poles antipode from each other on a globe, George?
No, two celestial poles in the sky.
Yeah, and are those 2 points antipode? My question again. My question again. My question again. Are those 2 points antipode to each other, George?
Yes.
So they're on a bloody sphere. You're automatically putting this observation on a sphere then, are you, you senile old bastard?
No. No.
Yes, you are. That's precisely what you're doing, you senile old bastard. I'll point it out again. You have got these 2 points antipode to each other because you are automatically putting the observation on a sphere. That is why they are antipode to each other, because you have presupposed a sphere, George.
The sphere explains what we observe.
Oh, so if we presuppose a sphere, then that's all good, right, George? No, George. No.
Look at all sorts of different models, and I
don't care about the models. We don't live on a model.
It's the data, the observational data, and we have
to
find that
live on a model.
Fits the observational data is a sphere.
Yes, starting with you mapping them with the assumption you're on a sphere. So you've said they can't be antipode to each other on a flat Earth. No, because you don't presuppose you're on a sphere if you're just looking at them on the obviously and observably flat plane we dwell atop.
Okay, if you're on a flat plane, then how can you possibly have stars rotating in opposite directions?
Opposite directions being on a sphere again, George. So the opposite directions that JLB just danced around, those opposite directions, you mean?
Say that again.
Those opposite directions when you presuppose a sphere.
It's not just that though, Nathan.
No, let's not presuppose a sphere. Let's presuppose a flat Earth.
Yeah, so we look up, we see stars. Yeah, that's no problem. I'm not making any assertions about them being antipode to each other like you are.
Well, I'm not saying antipode.
Yeah, I asked you, are they antipode to each other? The answer, yes. Clearly, this senile old bastard is also losing his memory. I asked you to clarify. Are they antipode? Yes, they are. So you did presuppose a sphere. Now you're just doubling down because you're a lying sack of shit and a senile old bastard.
No, that's not true. You just not understand. Let's forget.
I understand that in order for this to work on a sphere, you must first make the observation from a sphere, presupposing a sphere. All arguments for the globe will start by somebody like you or John saying the word hemisphere when you describe the observation that you're making to prove the bloody hemisphere that you've started with.
Let's presuppose a flat Earth.
Don't need to. It's obviously and observably flat. There's no presupposition isn't required. It's obviously flat. The only way to describe it otherwise is to presuppose you're on a bloody sphere.
I'm not presupposing. I'm presupposing I'm on a flat Earth.
Yeah, we are on a flat Earth. That goes without saying. It's obviously and observably flat. And the only way to say contrary to that, as I keep saying, is to presuppose you're on a sphere with an R radius value that you've already got.
No, are you dense? Get the wax out of your ears. I said
that's just an ad hominem attack. I'll just keep saying it. It is flat, obviously, and observably flat. However, if you presuppose you're on a sphere, you can make all sorts of observations about stars and about perspective blocking things from the bottom up. Not Earth curve or sphericity.
Tell you what, Nathan, before
George,
I get
stop
off
talking.
here.
George,
wait, hold on. I want to talk to
no.
Anthony Riley. I want to help him with the distance to the sun before I get kicked off here.
No, hold on. Just hold on.
Oh,
Nathan,
God.
can you just say it again, please? Because I couldn't hear what you were saying. George, please stop talking.
No problem. The only way you're going to ever extract this data to being a sphere proof is if you first start with you on a sphere. So, stars that are antipode to each other will never work on a flat plane because you've obviously presupposed you're on a bloody sphere. That's why they're antipode to each other.
Cool, but how about if we presuppose we're on a flat Earth, right? Like in your mind, however the so-called countries are orientated, like the land masses, however you imagine that to be, let's presuppose that's true. How can you accommodate two different celestial poles on that? Like, let's presuppose your thing, whatever that is. How do you accommodate the two pole stars on that?
What thing?
John, don't call it poles. Let's just call it 2 points in the sky.
Talking to me, George.
Good idea.
George, he was talking to me. We already know your presupposition.
We don't want to get into
presupposition is
semantic
a sphere.
arguments. So there seems to be two different sort of phenomena going on. One that appears to go clockwise, one that appears to go counterclockwise. Let's presuppose flat Earth, like whatever you imagine that to look like. If you could somehow get far enough away to see it, how do you fit those two different rotations into that overall framework of how you understand the world?
Sorry, they rise in the east and set in the west for you. They rise in the east and set in the west for me.
Yeah, but that's not the same as the rotations that we're talking about, is it? Like you are explicitly ignoring the question at this point.
Where's this rotation referencing? What are we what's that starting point?
You know what clockwise means and you know what anti-clockwise means.
Yeah, so are we talking about...
And you know that both of these places exist. You've already admitted that. So let's presuppose flat Earth.
Why are they anti-clockwise? Why are they
I could make so much money if flat Earth was true, dude.
You're demanding that I accept these are... We've already gone through this.
So help me make money. Help me see the flat Earth the way you see it.
So straw man alert from John. So what's this straw man, John? You got this straw man? Or are you going to let me answer? Why do I have to accept that they're anti-clockwise and clockwise to each other?
Well, they're not anti-clockwise and clockwise to each other. They're anti-clockwise and clockwise in their own right.
And how are you going to reference that? You going to show me that?
Well, you've already told me you agree with that. So now you're going back to disagreeing about it. So do you agree with it or not?
I agree. For me, here right now, they rise in the east and they set in the west. And they do the same for you. Yeah,
and yet we have two different rotations. So how does that work on the flat?
So how is that different? How is that different? Rise in the east, set in the west. You're saying no. One is rising in the west and setting in the east.
And you've already agreed to that part. So if we're rising in the east and setting in the west for me and for you, but mine go counterclockwise and yours go clockwise, how does that make sense?
Well, you're attributing this counterclockwise, clockwise thing to it. For both of us, they do the same thing. Rise in the east and set in the west. So I'm going to say they're doing the same thing.
One's clockwise and one's counterclockwise, and you've agreed to that part.
What John is trying to tell you is that in the northern hemisphere, the stars...
Oh, in the northern hemisphere? So we're already on a fucking sphere, are we, you senile old bastard? Shut up! Shut up! I don't want to know about what you presuppose with a sphere. Do you understand? We're trying to contain the terms to flat plane, and you jump in with your presupposition again. You can't help yourself. You have to presuppose R, don't you, you senile old bastard? It doesn't matter what we're talking about. The power of R compels George. He has to ejaculate and say, quick, let's presuppose it's a sphere. In R we trust. That's what George has to do. He's compelled by R to ejaculate into this conversation and put his bloody presuppositional sphere in.
Are you such a sociopath that you can't engage in civil discussion?
You jump into the conversation that two people are having, saying, if you presuppose that we're on a hemisphere, yeah, George, I'll jump all over that crap and point out to my audience that all you're doing is jumping in to beg the question.
No, I'm just saying, the stars in the UK, they rise in the east, they swing through the south to the west, whereas in John's continent, in Australia, they rise in the east, swing through the north to the west. So
on the bottom of a sphere.
Rotating in opposite directions.
On the bottom of a sphere, if you place it on the bottom of a sphere.
I never mentioned anything about a sphere.
So this is going to happen that way. So it will do exactly as described if we're just walking across, traversing a flat plane, will it, George?
No, it won't.
Oh, right. That's interesting.
Stars in the UK rise in the east, swing through the south part of the sky to the west and set in the west. In Australia, the stars rise in the east, swing through the north.
Through the south part of the sky? So you're saying the south part of the sky is the bottom section of a sphere? That's what you're saying, because they don't. They go up. What are you talking about? They don't dip down. That's nonsense. This is just your assertion based on an arbitrary construct of a sphere.
It's an observation. John, how do the stars swing?
They don't dip down towards the south of a sphere. That's what you've just asserted, you slippery little sod, and it won't fly.
I never mentioned anything about a sphere here.
You said they dip down to the south, and you were referring to the geological south of the sphere, weren't you, George? Let's be honest.
I am not. I'm saying, if you look on a flat plane, do you deny that you have a northern...
No, you won't qualify what you've just said. Now you've just changed the goalpost and put it on a flat plane, rather than admitting your little tactic, which I've caught and pointed out to the audience.
Every flat earth model...
You're not going to get your slippery little presupposition of a sphere in, George. Doesn't matter what angle you play, I'll catch it every time.
Around the periphery. That Antarctica is what you call the southern part of the world. The North Pole is the northern part of the world.
Is it?
We're asking,
when have I made that assertion? Find that assertion, you cheeky sod. When have I made that assertion? When have I made that assertion, George? When have I made that assertion?
Of the flat plane.
No, this is a straw man.
Southern part.
This is a straw man. I haven't made that assertion. Who says that it's around the outside? Have I said that?
I'm saying we're looking at observations. If you observe the stars in the northern part of the flat plane, they rotate in a different direction across the sky than they do in the southern part of the flat plane.
What
and we're
asking,
what
is this referencing? This is a straw man. So what they're doing, John Le Bon included, is setting up a straw man with the azimuthal equidistant projection and telling us that that's our world. Aren't you, George?
Like, can you tell me where on the flat plane Australia is, so I have a better way to describe it? Like, if it's not in the southern hemisphere, that's cool. Let's presuppose flat. Where is Australia on the flat conception? Where is it?
So, given that there are how many thousand maps, you want me to pick one and arbitrarily say I worship this map?
You don't have to worship it, no. But do you have any that you can actually use, or are we stuck using? Are we stuck using the bald terminology because flat hasn't even come up with its own map yet? Like, what's the situation in that regard?
The standard rhetoric is globe.
You must have some idea, Nathan, upon the relative positions of the various countries and continents on this flat plane. That's all we're asking is where are you positioning?
Yeah, we're trying to presuppose flat here. Like, I want to presuppose flat, so help me with this.
So
like,
I should know the exact layout of a world of deception. I should know that, given that there's thousands of maps. I should know that.
But if you're going to argue with our terminology...
So you have no idea then where you live.
No, not your terminology.
You have no idea then where you live in relationship to John and I, huh? I'm in northern Minnesota. I'm on the Canadian border of Minnesota and northern Minnesota.
Who cares? The answer is no.
I know you are in
Brisbane.
the UK.
So on the flat, like, help me presuppose flat. Where am I relative to him?
Let me have a go, Nathan, please.
Well, let me just answer his question first. So I've just said there's thousands of different layouts on different maps. Why isn't there one?
We're asking, what is your perception of what is the map?
You're asking a layman to lay out the geography of the world. That's what you're asking.
Yeah, we're asking, how do you view the layout of the world on this flat plane?
So you are literally asking a layman to map the world. So unless I map the world for you, the obvious and observable nature of our reality that we're presented with and can look at is void because I can't map the world. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're trying to understand your concept of the world and how it relates to what we observe in the night sky. That's all John and I are trying to do.
Couldn't give a crap about the night
what
sky.
Your reality is, because that will help us explain what we are observing.
Sorry, what's the lights in the sky got to do with the map? So you've just changed the subject,
right
George.
Now is how you're viewing the world in the heavens.
We're talking about the layout of the world, and now you've changed the subject to the stars. So the question on the table is...
No, I haven't changed anything. This is all related to one another. The relative layout and relationship of the various continents and countries have a direct bearing on how you observe the stars at night and what your reality is.
Yeah, and what's more, I'm just trying to presuppose flat. Like, this is going to help me. We just need... How do I presuppose flat if no one can even tell me where I am relative to other people?
You're misunderstanding what a presupposition is. So the Earth is obviously and observably flat. The only way that you get anything other than that result, John, is to insert a presupposition of a radius value, which is what you do.
No, I want to presuppose flat. So can you help me do that and tell me where I am relative to our friend from Canada, or where you are?
I'll say it again.
Like, how do I describe where I am if I can't use ball terminology? That's cool. I get resonating. Let's not use ball terminology. I like that.
Yeah,
you tell me where I am relative to him. If I think that I'm south and he's north, but I can't use that, that's cool. You tell me where
I'm not saying you can't use
on your
that.
Conception of the Earth.
No.
Dude, stop the verbal fucking.
I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm saying that I can't lay out the map of the world, and there are thousands of maps. What I'm also saying is there is no presupposition involved in looking at something very far away. There's a building, I see it. It's a concrete noun. The Earth is obviously and observably flat. There's no presupposition there. None. The only presupposition is the R value that will be inserted to that fact or observation. So I see a building, there it is. A very long distance away. No explanation required. However...
So you've got no way to conceptually explain people's, like, locations compared to each other. You don't like people saying north or south or hemisphere, but you've got nothing to replace it with at all.
Yes, nothing wrong with north and south. Sorry, north and south has got many different attachments and starting points as well. So what are we talking? Magnetic? True? Which north are we talking about?
Well, just where am I compared to you? Because the ball model would say that you're in the northern part and I'm in the southern part, right? And it's just a useful way to describe relative positions. But if you're saying we can't do that, that's fine.
No.
Help me,
help me see flat Earth.
That's not where I am compared to you.
Why are you misrepresenting my argument? This is a very cheap tactic. I expected better. So, John, that's not what I've done. I've said, which north are we talking about? There's several.
Oh, there are? What are the several norths?
Not George. Not George. I don't care about you. You're thick.
Okay.
Well, I also don't know what the several norths are, so can you help me? What are the several norths?
Really?
I'm trying to learn.
These are just concepts, John. And I'm talking about reality. So I'll try once more. The Earth.
Yeah, in our reality, what norths are there? I'm familiar with one.
Yeah. You're talking about a concept in relation to mapping things. Now, I don't have a map of the world, and as a layman, to be expected to provide one in order to accept the obvious and observable nature of my reality is fallacious. I don't have to produce a map to prove that what I see is flat. Further to that...
This is all double speak, Nathan. You're backed into a corner.
I'm going to kick you out, George. One more time. One more time. One more time. I'm in the middle of my sentence.
Talk about north or south.
Right,
we need a
last chance.
Bye, George.
Yeah, I'm going to kick you out. That was your last chance. I don't have to presuppose anything to observe something a very long distance away, obviously and observably flat. The only way to extract further to that is to add in a presupposition of an Earth radius, the R value used in every one of your star observations that you will throw at me. And the question then is, what about the presupposition of the R value? Don't need a presupposition to just look at something. It's a concrete noun.
So, just to follow up, that's going to be the same assessment of our observation of the heavens. We see it. That's what we see. We observe what they're doing. That's it.
Yeah, it's
okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to get my head around.
So it would be the same thing.
I'm trying to presuppose flat Earth. It's hard to presuppose flat Earth, though, if you don't even have a single map or model.
Not a
presuppose flat Earth. You presuppose a globe.
Can I ask some questions, please? I've waited
try it one more time.
I just
I'm going to round out
questions.
soon. I've got to try it one more time. There is no presupposition involved in looking at something. Yeah? You look at something and go, building. That's the end of your explanation. In a short distance, mouse. It's right next to me. Don't need to give that explanation, it's right next to me, but I can add it. I can just say mouse. There it is, I see it. Same with a building. There's a building. I see it. Now that gets very different when you insert a presupposition of an R value. Suddenly that building isn't really there. Suddenly it's a slightly looming non-standard refraction of the building that's blocked by Earth curve. Why? Because the model says it's not there. Even though we see it, it's obviously and observably there. Concrete noun. But the globers, who have an R value, will turn that concrete noun into a phenomena that needs explaining. And it doesn't. It's just there. We just see it. No presupposition required. It's just there.
All right. Happy birthday to Anthony. Go, Anthony. Go.
Right. John. 3 questions.
Hello, is your name Anthony, is it?
Say again?
Is your name Anthony?
Yes, sir.
It's nice to talk with you, Anthony. Look, it got a little bit heated a moment ago, but overall, I like this idea of just having conversations. And like, if you and I disagree about the shape of the Earth, it's not like to me, this isn't something to get angry about. Like, what I was hoping was that you guys could tell me the best arguments for flat Earth, and I still haven't heard a single one.
Oh, really? Let me just reiterate the best argument for flat Earth. You see something because it is there, in a very long distance away. There's no other explanation required. That's the obvious and observable nature of our reality. It's obviously and observably flat. The only thing that you can do further to that is add a presupposition of an R value. But our nature, the reality we observe, is flat. Now, if that's not flat Earth evidence, when I can show you picture after picture after picture after picture of it being flat, then I don't know what is.
But where is it flat, though? Like, say, I live in Brisbane. This is a very hilly place. It's not flat at all. So when you talk about flat, do you mean like as in actually flat? Like, well, I'm not really sure what you mean by that.
So, yeah, granted, that's a fair argument. The topology isn't flat. So to assert flat Earth is a massive oversimplification. But when you've got bodies of water that you can look over, then you can look at it in a great distance without any obstruction.
What kind of distances are we talking?
Well,
great.
People taking long-distance photography up to 300 miles from altitude, right on the beach.
300 miles of flat water? Where on earth is water flat for 300 miles?
Everywhere you look.
Really? So, like, when you say flat, you mean it still has waves and things, like it is curvy in that sense?
Well, no, you're seeing something a vast distance away with nothing obscuring the view of it.
But, like, when you say flat, you don't actually mean flat. You just mean, like, flat-ish kind of thing?
No, I mean flat.
JLP is just trolling.
Flat.
Just trolling now.
Oh, no, I don't mind qualifying terms. So, you see something far away, forget that the water's moving. There's no obstruction. There's nothing blocking your view of it. The only obstruction you get is through angular limitations, i.e. if you're very low to the ground. That makes sense?
So the light sort of doesn't bend. The light is 100% direct and straight.
Sorry, are you now going to tell us about refraction bringing it around a sphere?
No, I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to understand. So you're saying you can see flat over a long distance, but the water's not really flat and the land's not really flat. But the light is flat. Is that it?
The land is flat. That's what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying.
But where is the land flat though? Like here in Brisbane, I'm telling you right now, it's not flat at all. Not even close, man.
Okay, you can find plenty of examples of completely flat
So
land.
is it flat Earth, but not really flat?
Well, I'm at about 250 feet in altitude, right in the centre of the UK. So the only difference between me and the sea level is 250 feet.
Okay, but like say people say, oh, we can see long distances. It's like, yeah, that's cool. You're making observations over long distances.
Are we moving past this flat bit then?
But the land isn't flat. Like maybe in the Nevada desert it is.
Are we moving past this? Sorry. Yeah, the land.
Water is
hold on, Arwen.
Hold
Hold on. Yeah, the land that I'm standing on right now is 250 feet higher than sea level, and I'm probably 200 miles inland, 170 miles inland. So there's only 250 feet difference between the water that's moving maybe a few feet with the waves and me right here, right now. That's measured 250 high. So between me and 250 miles away, if I'd make a long distance observation of something, it's basically only 200 feet, 250 feet difference. So yeah, that's pretty flat.
But that's also a relative thing though. Like when you're saying that 250 meters above the ground, they would be two. That'd be presupposing a flat Earth, yeah?
You don't need to presuppose a flat Earth.
Well, how would you know, though? If they're 250 meters above sea level and you are as well, but you can't see it with direct line of sight, then how would you know that it's flat underneath them as well?
Why would we question anything else?
Well, that's the idea, isn't it, to question things. So if we have beliefs in our head, like I used to believe I lived on a giant spinning ball, and then when I questioned that, I realized I didn't have evidence for that. So now I'm doing the same thing with flat Earth. I'm like, well, maybe it's flat. So what is the actual evidence?
There's no geometrical curve. There is no cumulative drop. It's very simple. You see something.
But what's the evidence for flatness, though? Like this.
John LeBon. Can you hear me?
Inherent in the geometry.
Hey, John.
John LeBon, can you hear me?
It's not. We still haven't heard.
Like, suppose there's this guy called Scotty Storm. He wants to debate me, all right? And it's like, okay, maybe in the year that I've been away from Flat Earth, they've come up with really good Flat Earth arguments. Like, you guys can help me by telling me what is the best argument Scotty Storm's going to bring. If you're telling me his arguments are all going to be against the ball, well, I'm the best person at arguing against the spinning ball. Like, I'm the best ball Earth skeptic in the world today, johnlebon.com. So I don't need arguments against the spinning ball. The best arguments against spinning ball are my arguments. What I want is arguments for flat Earth. For flat Earth.
Kind of how he is. Hold on, Anthony. Hold on. Hi, John. You've not been introduced. Hello, John. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Anthony,
Good to
I want
be
Anthony
here.
to ask his three
Somebody,
questions.
can you just shut up for a second? Can everyone just shut up just for a minute? Is that okay?
Everybody shut up. Quantum Maurice
This is
here.
disrespectful.
Here.
Anthony Riley tried to get 3 sentences for an hour and he hasn't get them out. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think
just
John
3 questions to John.
Unbelievable.
Just 3 questions and then I'll give way.
You guys just
Hold on,
can't help
let's take
yourself.
charge. Hold on,
up,
John. Anthony, right. Anthony, go ahead, get your questions in, then John, if you want to go ahead afterwards.
Yeah, just 3 questions, then I'm done. John LeBon.
But hold on, you want to ask 3 questions in a row, or do I get to explore the question with you once you ask the question?
Ask one, answer one, ask one, answer one, ask one. 3 straight questions that are pretty much closed, and we're going to be able to get a
we can organise to do 10 back and forth if you want to set aside a set time. But I just came here to have a chat. I didn't come here to say, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. No, I just came here to learn more about your arguments.
Stop stalling and get to the questions.
Right. So you claimed that there were 2 opposite rotating pole stars, correct? Or star
I'm asking if you guys believe that, and I'm still not sure if you do or not. Do you? Do you believe that?
It's accepted that there is 2 rotation points in the sky.
Do you accept that?
But they're not opposite.
Stop talking. Let him ask his question.
They're not opposite. Do you agree that all the stars
do you accept
to
there are these 2, and one goes clockwise and one goes counterclockwise?
3 questions,
Hey, John
come
LeBon, close your pie hole for crying out loud.
Come on, 3 questions. Do you agree? Yes or no?
Let's focus on the first question. Do you agree with me that there's one that's clockwise and one that's counterclockwise or not?
No, I don't agree with that.
Stop rumpusing and just.
John, why are you doing this?
I'm asking you simple questions about objective
You're not the
reality.
one asking the question, John.
Yes, I am the one asking the
Anthony
questions.
is
I'm asking you a
asking the
question right
question.
now. Do you accept objective reality? Yes or no?
Right.
Oh,
I don't accept that there
Are you coming here to play tricks with me?
John.
You're trying to do little tricks,
John,
little
no, I'm
rhetorical
not.
tricks.
Wow.
I'm being
I don't
really
have time
clear
for tricks, man. I'm
because
talking
all
about
the stars rise
reality.
due east. John, listen,
Objective
please.
Stop
reality. Do you
rumpusing.
accept it or not?
John.
I'll just summarise for the audience what's going on here. Basically, it's been pointed out to John LeBond that his proof of a sphere Earth is a formal logical fallacy, and now he's having to rumpus the hangout rather than having that embarrassing truth be pointed out to him very slowly. But it's okay, John. We'll drag you through it, or you'll make some excuse for leaving. But we're going to point out your formal logical fallacy, whether you like it or not.
3 questions, John. You'll
Well, is there
realise
such
that
thing
you're
as
wrong.
east? Because I believe there is. So this guy's asking me
We can
questions
denote
that...
it because it's 90 degrees from south, and you're looking south when
So
you
is
see
there
your
east or
rotation
not? Just
point.
tell me if there's east. Is there such thing as east?
Shut
and west?
up!
John, do all the stars rise due east? Yes or no?
So you accept there is an east?
Oh my
It's a
God.
yes or a no question.
I think, let me put it like this. I think if I was to wake up in the morning and look towards the east, I would see stars rising.
Correct.
That's what I would say.
Correct.
Would you agree
That's
with
the
that?
same all over
Do you
the
agree
plane,
with that?
whether it be a ball
Does
or
the
a
same
plane.
thing? Does that happen in your part of the world? Do
Yeah.
you see that happen
Right.
as well?
It does. It does.
Yes.
Because no matter whether it's a plane or ball, all stars rise due east and they all set due west. Plane
So
or
we
ball,
agree. We
that's
agree
not
about the
contentious.
stars rising in the east, and we also agree that the stars are important. We agree on that
So
as well.
there goes your little
Really?
baloney
Myself-
clockwise
So-
and
so did we-
anti-clockwise, John LeBon. You clown. All stars, the sun and the moon, rise in the east and set in the west. There is no clockwise and counterclockwise. Clown. That's what he's saying.
Well, yeah, but we're trying to get it through. It's just not. It's just a struggle.
John, we
And
did agree
John
then, didn't we?
LeBon, you said
Well, I'm
there
saying the
was-
stars are important.
that
Are you saying
there's-
they're important?
Wait a second. There is no south selection.
Just calm down, dude. Relax, okay? We're just talking about things. Don't get
I
angry.
know,
So
I
you
got
guys
through
agree
one.
the
No,
stars
We
are
only
John,
have 2 left.
clown.
Come on,
Yeah.
John.
John, you're
Come on,
manipulating
let
the
Anthony
conversation.
continue.
2 questions and then I'm done. So we've just agreed pretty much. I'm pretty sure we agreed that the stars
I
rose.
hope we've agreed, because I'm telling you that the stars are they're important, and it sounds like you're agreeing with me about that.
Can you please
Okay, now
let
shut up,
Anthony
John.
ask the
Question
Oh, hold on.
number
You
2,
said,
John.
it was 3 questions, one, and then now I'm asking you. Do you agree that the stars are important?
I'm
You
asking
don't get to
questions
ask a
here.
question.
Oh, you're not going to answer that question,
yet.
are you?
We'll come back. You can
No.
ask
So
a
you
question
want to use the
later.
stars sometimes, but not other
Pretender
times.
clown, sir.
So, John, do you know what declination is? You're in Australia, right? Do you know what declination is for where you live?
I'm not sure if I know what you mean by that word. No. Can you explain it to me?
I'm asking, do you know what declination means for your part of the world?
I don't use that word, so you
So
you
I'll
tell me
have
what
to
it
say
means.
that as a no.
What?
Well, just tell me what it means. I'm here to learn.
You don't
Okay.
even know that?
Declination is an adjustment that's made to compensate for your compass when it's pointing south. According to your model, you're not actually looking south. You've got to adjust for something called declination.
My compass points north.
Yeah, but you get from your north pointing, you get your south, correct?
I've never used the compass to walk south, but yeah, you would walk the opposite direction of north, I would think.
Right.
Are we,
So
do we agree about that?
Right. So when you look due south,
But this declination thing you're talking about, like I never did
We're nearly
orienteering
there.
or anything.
We're nearly
Let
there,
him
John.
continue.
We're nearly there, John. When you get your compass
No,
on
but
your
you
tape,
keep fast forwarding, dude. So you're asking these questions. Are you trying to have a conversation or not?
Sake. Dude.
I'm only asking 3 questions.
I know that some people, they bring up all these words to sound smart, but then when you're trying to have a
sounds like
conversation, they've got
Shut
nothing
up
but
for
rhetoric.
a moment and
Come on, John.
Can someone please help this angry person to mute or something? He's losing the plot over here.
Yeah, everybody
So
else
this
can mute
declination
for a
thing,
minute.
John, you're doing
explain
you're doing a
to
great
me this
job of
declination.
manipulation,
I'm here to
John.
learn.
Gentlemen,
'Cause
everybody else
Scotty's-
mute. I can deal with this. Just
Because
mute for a minute.
Scotty Storm could use this argument against me in our debate. So you're going to help me now. If there's something I don't know, you can teach me. So what's this declination thing? Like, explain to me why this is
an adjustment that you guys have to make by virtue of being in Australia, because your compass apparently doesn't point due south. It points between 9 and 14
apparently.
degrees.
Who told you that? Like, this
Hang
is
on, you
literally new.
interrupted. John,
So
sorry, you
tell me.
interrupted. I hadn't finished my point. Your declination is an adjustment that you guys have to make according to your model, because when you guys get a compass and point and it shows where due north is, apparently it's not actually due north. You've got to adjust for this thing called declination. And depending on how far east or west you are, it'll be between 9 and 14 degrees. which begs a problem for you guys. Because when you claim that there's a southern...
been a problem for me.
Hang on,
31 years old.
When you claim there's a rotation point in the south, it's not actually south according to your model, is it? It's between 9 and 14 degrees off, which all of a sudden makes it a flat map.
Well, again, you can just say southern direction if you like. Like, are you arguing about words? No, you can't
say southern direction. It's southern direction subject to something.
Okay, I can't say southern direction. How would you describe it? You give me your flat Earth description of what I'm looking at.
This is your model. This is what your model tells.
Are you going back to denying that rotation, though? See, this is the problem. You're going back to denying it.
I accept the rotation point.
But are you arguing semantics to avoid facing objective reality?
I'm using your model against you, John. John,
it's not my model. You don't know what my model is. You don't know my. So now you're talking about stuff you don't even know. It's not my model.
You're a clown, sir. Shut up.
Model. So the second question is, which you answered no to, declination.
This
you didn't know about.
I'm learning here. Like, so this declination thing, who told you about it?
Third question.
And then was it an Australian? Was it an Australian who told you that they have to adjust their compass?
John, I'm on.
Are you saying that my compass doesn't face north? Because this is news to me.
Come on, third question. So now
so you keep fast forwarding, but you're not actually explaining your point.
Shut up, John. Listen. Now that we know what declination is, the third question is.
No, I'm not so sure that we do, because you're telling me what happens in Australia, but I'm telling you right now, I've never used declination in my life. So.
Well, just type in.
So
Google,
you're just making stuff up now.
Just type in Google the declination.
Is this one of those flat Earth things where people have repeated it to you so many times you just believed it?
John, type in declination value for your town in Google and just tell me what degrees it comes back with.
All right, I'll do that right now. Give me a second.
Okay. No worries.
Because you have to understand, if what you're saying is true,
just do what you're saying.
You're helping me. If what you're saying is true,
I am doing. I'm trying to help you. Just
relax
get your declination value.
Your friends to relax for a second, and let's work together here. This is good.
Just get your magnetic declination value for the town that you're in. I reckon you'll be either 9 or 13 because you're probably on the east or the west side of Australia. Just a guess, but I'm just applying your model based on where you probably live. But let's see what your declination adjustment is.
What I can do is I can read this out to you because I'm learning right now. So this is from the USGS, and it says how to use a compass with a USGS topographic map. So is that what you're talking about?
Just tell me what town you're in. I'll do it for you.
I'm in Brisbane.
Right. So Brisbane's got a declination adjustment of 10 degrees.
Can you give me a link so I can go and check that?
Yeah. Type in magnetic declination in Brisbane, which is what I just told you to do, and it'll give you the value of 10 degrees.
Hold on a second. Let's look this up. This is good stuff, man.
Yeah, but the problem is your compass needs to. Your compass is going to tell you that when you look south, your stars aren't going to line up due south, but on a ball they must. You've got to tell, according to this thing called declination, which you now have to adjust for. Your compass is.
I don't have to adjust for it. I don't use a compass when I look at the southern rotation.
That's because
maybe you're like operating on a false premise here. Like I don't use a compass to do this. So you like throwing in a red herring.
How do you know that the south then if you don't use a compass?
Well, I'm just using the word south as a description, but you can use any word you like. Just over there. You can just point and say over there.
Words have meaning though, and you're saying there's two rotations.
Yeah, and you understand my meaning, don't you? If I say I point over there,
but
and I can use time lapse for. See, now you're interrupting me. Just give me a second here. So if I point in that direction and I say with time lapse we can see them going apparently clockwise, then I can use any word. You understand what I'm talking about, whether I use the word south or another word.
All the stars.
So you understand. You're interrupting me. So you understand what I'm saying. You're just arguing with the words. This is called arguing semantics.
You are doing it with your counterclockwise and clockwise, you clown. We already told you 5 times.
All the stars rise due east. We've already said that. The second question was declination, which you answered no. You didn't know what it was. And now we're
I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn.
Okay.
So
okay. Now we're on the third one.
But how is that declination relevant to the question of the rotation?
Listen. We've just established that your adjustment is 10 degrees.
How is declination relevant to the rotation? Answer that.
Because if declination has to be adjusted for, which it does for you, because
it doesn't. I can point to that rotation without a compass. I don't even use a compass.
Shut your mouth.
I told you that I use a compass. You're making that up.
Shut your mouth and open your ears.
This is what we call a red herring.
No, it's not
what a red herring is.
I do. It's called a straw man.
Shut up. My
John, listen.
So you understand that right now you're engaged in a red herring. You understand exactly what I'm talking about.
No, I'm applying your model, John. It is a fact on your model. You've got a declination. John, listen.
A red herring. Is this really the best that you've got? Red herrings.
Stop speaking over me. Listen. Shut your mouth and open your ears.
This is a red herring. Is this really the best?
John, I've heard you say it's a red herring 5 times.
I'm still thankful for learning what declination is. That's useful.
What you're now doing, John, is engaging in rumpusing the hangout. So I'll say it for the audience again while John rumpusses the hangout. This is John being demolished. He believes we're on a sphere with a southern rotation point antipode to a northern.
I don't believe we're on a sphere. When did I say that?
Sorry, John. Le Bon model.
Are you guys operating on the premise that you think that I think that we're living in a ball?
John,
I think you're a crayon muncher, personally.
Wow, you guys haven't been paying attention to johnlebon.com at all, have you?
So
John
you actually think that I think that
model-
we're living on a ball.
John,
No,
we're on
Gavin,
the question.
you're a clueless
How can you
clown.
say to me that you're applying my model if you don't even know what my model is?
So the
John,
Lobon model is
John,
not
John,
a geocentric sphere.
John, third question. We're nearly there. Please, come on. Don't interrupt. Let me answer. Let me ask the question.
Yeah, ask the question. It should be good.
We've now established that your adjustment for declination is 10
No, we
degrees.
haven't established that. You're making that up. I don't make this adjustment. That's making
No,
it
this
up.
is your model. This is your model.
You don't know what my model is. We just established that too.
Now, the problem
You
is,
haven't visited johnlebon.com.
John, stop. Shush. Because we have to make this adjustment, that's not very good for a sphere model because...
You don't have to make that adjustment. You've never made that adjustment in your life. You're just making this up now.
No, so you denied that magnetic declination is part of your model.
I'm not talking about declination. I'm talking about those stars that appear to be rotating clockwise. You can describe it.
Yeah, we've
south
dealt with
if
that
you
point.
want.
Here goes again.
No, you haven't dealt with it though, because you keep coming
we've
back.
agreed that all the
What's this
stars appear
declination
to
thing?
rise due east.
It's what we call a red herring.
No, all the stars rise due east.
Yes, it's a red herring.
We then asked about declination.
Declination
And you
is
said
a
you
red
didn't know
herring.
about it. We then found out that Brisbane needed a 10 degrees adjustment. Now, on a
Well, that's what this
sphere,
website says.
on a
but it has
sphere,
nothing to
the
do with
southern rotation point has to be
You haven't
due
explained
south.
how that's relevant to the rotation, though.
You don't know what south
You haven't
is.
explained
because
how
your
that's relevant to the
compass is telling you
rotation.
that it's 10 degrees out.
Nathan,
So if
can
we
you
live on a
shut him
ball,
up?
why is that?
I'm going to shut up and let you explain to me how that declination is relevant to the rotation.
Right, I've just done it and you weren't listening. So shut your mouth, open your ears, and listen
Just
carefully.
calm down. Just relax. Just relax.
No, listen. Just listen. Stop interrupting. If we live on a sphere, that 10 degrees adjustment that you guys have to make because
No, but you're making that up.
John can't help interrupting because he's completely triggered and this demolishes his argument. Every time he does it, I'm going to point it out to the audience from now on.
He's a clown, man.
Your magnetic adjustment, your declination adjustment is 10
What
degrees.
adjustment?
There he goes again, interrupting because he's been demolished. This is the demolition of John's argument. He doesn't have to like it, and every time he interrupts Anthony, who's trying to get this point and has been for 10 minutes, I'm going to point out to the audience that John is being demolished, and all he can do is rumpus the hangout, which is precisely what he will do.
You know, you're obfuscating.
Are you on crystal meth or something?
It's obvious, John.
Seriously.
You're not gonna... John, it's
And now
obvious
we're
that
getting
you're
into
not
ad hominem. This was inevitable.
No,
as well.
no. This is
Red
a
herring
medical
obfuscations, ad
analysis
hominems from
your
angry people.
freaky behavior.
John,
You're
but
worse than Rumpus.
I'll conclude now. I'll just make it aware that nobody heard me ask the question and for you to answer it. All you've done is laboured the point and obfuscated it. I'll give.
No, you're the one obfuscating, and you're making up fantasy stories about.
There we go again. Another interruption from John Le Bon because he won't let the point be concluded because it is devastating to any assertion that the lights in the sky prove we have a southern rotation point on a ball because we do not. That's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. That's what we're
Can you
dragging
explain
John
what
Le
that
Bon
means?
through.
What does affirming the consequent mean? Nathan, explain it. I'm here to learn. What does that mean?
No, you're not here to learn. Do not
If
do
P,
this,
then
Nathan.
Q.
Do not,
Q,
do not.
therefore P.
I explained it to
That's
you in a
an
comment that you
affirmative
responded
consequence.
to, John. I gave it
So
you
when
in
did
a
I do
full
that?
explanation in a comment that you responded to. So did you not read the comment fully?
Oh, so you're talking about some other thing. You're not talking about this conversation right now.
Yeah, if P, then Q.
Okay. Well, let's
Q, therefore
save that
P.
for another time. Let's focus on this conversation.
Yeah,
These
save it for another
rotations
time,
happen.
right?
No, I'll give it for the audience. John doesn't want to hear it. If we have a southern rotation point on the southern hemisphere, yeah, that's affirming
But
the
I'm not using the word
consequent.
sphere. I asked you for better words, and you don't have any. You admitted you don't even have any. So this,
Sorry, the word sphere is part of the begging the question fallacy. It assumes the outcome. That's the point. That's the logical fallacy. It's called begging the question, assuming your outcome.
let's assume flat Earth. I said to you, help me assume flat Earth, and you
And
can't.
I've said it 5 times. There is no assumptions needed when you look at something in the distance. It's a concrete noun. No presupposition required.
We see the stars. I already told you this. We simply see them. There's
I
no
can explain it
explanation.
simply for him. I
There's
can
no
explain it.
explanation needed.
I can explain it to make him see.
Well, Anthony has
If
got
you-
his last point in.
Please, I want to see. There's
I've
good
tried
money
to-
in flat Earth, and I want to get me some of that sweet, sweet flat Earth cash.
Let Anthony
This guy is
finish,
trolling.
please.
This guy is totally trolling.
Anthony had one last point. If he wants to get it in, I've kept the show open for much, much longer than I would normally because I'm pleased John's here. So, Anthony, if you want to get your last point in, hopefully you
The
can.
last point was simple. We've just established that declination by living in Brisbane.
We haven't established that. Stop lying. Stop being a liar.
You did it. You looked it up.
You're lying now. You're just making stuff up about declination and adjusting compasses. I'm not talking about compasses. I'm talking about stars you can observe.
We've established that you didn't know what declination was, and now you're calling me.
Hold on, Anthony.
I'm not.
Hold on, both of you. Hold on, just 1 second. Sorry. So, what is the conclusion you draw from seeing those lights, John Le Bon?
Good question. So this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe that if we use time-lapse photography in your part of the world, you will see the stars appear to go anti-clockwise. Down here, it's clockwise.
Yeah, that's because we're looking north and you're looking south. That's the only reason.
Oh, hold on. On what model are we looking north or south? What are you talking about?
If
on what model?
Sphere, I look
No.
north.
Anthony,
I'm talking about observable phenomena.
It's the same on a ball
Get
as it is on a
straight
plane.
here. Get your story straight. Why do I see the stars appearing to rotate one direction? And why do you see them appearing to rotate a different direction?
Because I'm facing north and you're facing south.
Hold on. Let's just.
Hold on. Is it because I'm facing
south?
You're facing north?
I just want to get John from the wings. Just if you can just let John speak from the wings. He's been waiting patiently as well.
John who? Which John?
You.
Okay. How many times have we explained to this crayon muncher that no matter where you are on the earth, the sun, the moon, and all the stars rise in the east and set in the west? This clockwise and counterclockwise is relative. It's relative to which direction you're facing. That's the number 1 point. Number 2, he's been stating on here about a southern celestial star. That does not exist. Do they need citations for this?
It's a point in the sky, not a star. I'm talking about a point in the sky. Don't misrepresent. There's no need to misrepresent
doesn't matter.
me. If I'm wrong,
You said
don't misrepresent me.
southern celestial star or pole star. There, it doesn't exist.
I'm not talking about a star. I'm talking about a point in the sky.
So number 2, that's your number 2
You're
point.
misrepresenting me though, dude. Why are you doing that
can you
for?
shut him up, Nathan?
Well, his response is that you're misrepresenting him by saying there's a southern star. I don't think JLB's ever claimed that. He's saying there's a southern rotation point.
No, he said it earlier in the hangout.
I can explain it with an easy analogy.
Wait a second. We're not done yet. He said it earlier in the hangout. I wrote it down. That's why I brought it up.
Well, then let me say to you right now,
Okay.
I'm not trying to say there's a star. So if I said that, that's not what I'm trying to say. There's just a point in the sky. So we can agree about that. Just a point in the sky. Whether there's a star there or not doesn't matter.
How do you know it's a point?
Yeah,
Oh
is
my
it
God.
indiscriminate? What? Yeah.
Okay, so there's just a place.
It's an observation of light.
There is a central spot. You can call it a point, whatever. Now, I'm not claiming there's a star in the middle of that. So if that's what I said, wasn't my intention. I'm just saying that there is a point about which the stars appear to rotate. And that's very straightforward. And I still don't know if you guys agree with me about that or not.
Yeah.
You seem
We're
to,
going
but then
back
you
to the
don't.
first point about this clockwise, counterclockwise. Can you get it through your thick skull? We explained it to you 5 times
Well,
now.
can you just ask your question without personal attacks? Just ask the question calmly and politely, man. Come on.
I didn't ask a question. I just told you. I said all, from every point on the earth, the sun, the moon, and all the stars rise in the east and set in the west. When you say clockwise and counterclockwise, that's relative to your direction that you're facing. So it is you who are playing the semantics game.
So you're denying the rotation then? We're back to denial.
No, I'm denying your clouded straw man of clockwise and counterclockwise.
So if you were to come to Brisbane and you took time-lapse footage of the sky, do you think you would see clockwise rotation?
I would see all the stars rise in the
What's a
east
simple question?
and
Just a
set
simple
in the
question.
west.
Do you think you'd see the clockwise rotation?
He's answering your question. Listen to him.
Just a yes or no. That's all I really need.
No. All the stars
Okay, so we're back
rise
to
in the
denial. We're
east
back to
and
denial.
set
See, this
in
is
the
incredible
west.
to me. Like, I would have thought you guys would have got past this by now.
No, you're playing semantics, right, and accusing us of that exact crime.
Maybe you don't know what semantics is then. Like,
No,
you know what
it's
the word
the precise
clockwise
meaning
means.
of words.
You know
What you're
what the
using is
word
out of context.
clockwise means.
I can
You know what
address
that
it
word
directly.
means.
I can really
I
address it
already did
directly.
address it. Can't
How
you
many people on this
understand
panel
this?
are still denying those rotations?
I'll
We're not
explain it
denying
now, John.
rotation.
John, I'll explain it. You get two
Now,
clocks
who is
of
this,
opposite
Nathan?
walls in your room, and one will appear to go clockwise and the other anti-clockwise. In reality, we both know both is going clockwise. Two analog clocks facing each other on opposite walls of your room.
So you're saying that anti-clockwise is clockwise?
No, it's apparent and reality.
Cool. So do the stars here appear to go clockwise or anti-clockwise here in Brisbane, do you think?
They would, as
They
you
rise
visualize them.
and set in the
Go clockwise, whereas in your part of the world, they'd go anti-clockwise. And you know this fact, don't you?
Clockwise is only clockwise
just
if you're
explained that.
facing it.
They're both going clockwise,
It's
but from
subjective.
your
They're both
perspective,
going clockwise, are they?
Direction.
Even in the Northern Hemisphere?
In the
Clock-
Northern Hemisphere.
Counterclockwise
Sorry, what was that,
are
John?
directions.
What was that, John? In the Northern Hemisphere. Sorry?
Well, you can't give me replacement terms. I've asked you to help me, Nathan. You haven't got any replacement terms.
Hemisphere's the problem, John LeBon.
Well, hemiplane.
That's
In
where
the Northern
you're
Hemiplane.
going to rumpus me, I can shut you up. No problem. When you say sphere, that's when you use your fallacy. That's when you beg the question. Hemisphere puts you on a sphere.
Cool. So now put me on a plane. We're on a plane together. On the Northern Hemiplane where you are in the world, are you going to see clockwise or anti-clockwise?
You've had
You can do time-lapse photography of the sky.
Yeah, you've had it 5 times. John, I'm going to round this show out for a short break. Please give him it again for the 6th time. Then I'll round out for a quick break.
Yes. All the stars, the sun and the moon, rise in the east and set in the west, no matter where you are on the earth. Clockwise and counterclockwise aren't directions. They're relative to which direction you're facing. Right? This is the 2015 called, it wants your argument back. I mean, this is friggin' crayon muncher stuff.
And with that, we will have a short break. So I'll say first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. If you hated the show, then you know exactly what to do. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!